Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, Encore for Us, by CherryQuill. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin. Detonation Heart wasn't meant to go viral. It started as a joke, something to pass the time between midterms and the end of the world. A dare. A challenge. Something Katsuki Bakugo could win. And he did. But it didn't start with music. It began with a comment from a cocky upperclassman after a school-wide performance. Stick to yelling, Bakugo. Leave music to the real ones. Katsuki didn't just hear the insult, he internalized it, letting it churn in his chest for 3 days straight. Then he stormed into class and declared, "We're starting a band." Kirishima blinked in confusion. "We're what?" "You're on drums." "I can't play drums." "You'll learn." Next, he approached Jairu after music club and said, "You've got range." "Bass." She rolled her eyes. "What makes you think I care?" "You don't have to. Just don't SK." And then there was Izuku. Katsuki hadn't even known he listened when he mumbled melodies or jotted lyrics in the margins of his math notes. But Katsuki had noticed. "You're doing vocals," he said, tossing a mic in Izuku's lap. "You've got a voice. Don't waste it." Izuku blinked, eyes wide. "But I've never performed live before." "Exactly," Katsuki snapped, dragging a chair over. "Time to stop being a nerd and do something loud for once." The battle of the bands changed everything. For college teens on a half-lit gym stage, the sound system buzzing. Katsuki's mic shorted out, but the energy, the chaos, it worked. Katsuki's vocals were fierce. Kirishima pounded the drums with intensity. Jairu's bassline stitched it all together. And Izuku. He'd spent the day pale and shaking, voice cracking during warm-ups. But when the lights hit and Katsuki threw a glare over his shoulder, he sang. Just one verse. Soft, aching harmony. Almost drowned by the instruments until the crowd quieted and listened. Something shifted in the room. They didn't just win that night, they ignited. They played wherever they could, on rooftop cafes, in school gyms, under tarps during the rainy season. Then a blurry phone video of them performing went viral, especially the bridge where Izuku's voice trembled at first then soared. The comments flooded in. "Who's the green-haired guy? His voice. That lyric. I'm sobbing in a parking lot. Bakugo's fire, but the heart. That's the other dude." Fans came in waves. Their names spread, along with the pressure. Then came the cracks. Labels started circling, not the band, just Izuku. "You could go solo," they told him. "Your voice is too rare to play backup forever." Izuku always said no, but not quickly enough. Katsuki read an email Izuku left open once, a producer offering a demo deal. No pressure, just a conversation. It wasn't a betrayal, not yet. But Katsuki felt it anyway. "You rewrote the chorus," he snapped during rehearsal. "Sorry. But it sounded cleaner." "No one asked for cleaner. They asked for me. They asked for the song, Kaken." That was their first fight. The last one happened 2 weeks before their biggest gig yet. Katsuki, fists clenched, said, "If you're so good, go make your own band." Izuku, voice shaking but resolute, replied, "Maybe I will. At least I'll be heard for once." Silence followed. Izuku walked out. Kirishima froze. Jairu quietly unplugged her bass. That was the last time they stood in a room together. They cancelled the gig. The account went inactive. The logo disappeared. Fans speculated but never got an answer. Katsuki deleted the group chat. Izuku archived every demo file. Jairu kept her head down and moved on. Kirishima tried to keep in touch, but some things can't be patched over. Friendships, broken. Music, gone. Feelings, never addressed. Detonation Heart became nothing more than a name buried in playlists and half-written fan-fics, a heartbreak turned collective memory. 4 years later, Katsuki Bakugo stood on stage, bathed in sweat and screaming lights. "You ready to get pumped, Osaka?" The crowd roared. Lights flashed. Ground Zero had arrived. Katsuki still led with vocals raw and explosive. Zero shredded guitar. Kaminari's synths glitched with electricity. Kirishima drummed like a man possessed. They were chaos perfected. But even now, Katsuki could feel the ghosts. Old fans in the crowd still wore Detonation Heart's Cracked Heart merch. Some held signs that read, "Bakudeku when." Katsuki ignored them. He didn't think about Izuku, not when he wrote lyrics that sounded suspiciously like responses. Not when Ground Zero's breakout hit, Secondhand Echo, included the line, "You wrote the words, but I made the fire." Fans noticed. They always noticed. One blog wrote, "Is Ground Zero's latest track a direct jab at Emerald Riot's lead singer, Midoriya Izuku?" Izuku Midoriya had made a name for himself after leaving Detonation Heart, the band he had helped build from scratch. He didn't just leave the band, he left everything behind: the memories, his hometown, and most importantly, Katsuki Bakugo. On a whim, he applied for a prestigious music production workshop in Los Angeles. This selective program was known for producing top indie songwriters and offered mentorship, studio access, and global connections. To his surprise, he got in. Initially, Izuku just wanted to write music without the pressures of fame. He interned in underground studios, ghostwrote for rising artists, and honed his voice privately, away from the noise of the spotlight. This time gave him clarity and control over his art. One night, during an open mic at a small downtown bar, he ran into Jairu. She had been studying abroad in NYC and was in LA for a short collaboration. It had been a while since they last saw each other, and they decided to jam that night, just like old times. It felt right, easy, and honest. A few months later, they officially formed a new band called Emerald Riot. They soon added Todoroki, who had been studying classical composition at Juilliard but had always leaned toward alt-rock, and Tokoyami, who had a following in Tokyo's underground metal scene and moved to LA after being signed by an indie label. Izuku hadn't intended to become a frontman, but this time, his voice refused to stay in the background. And no one tried to drown him out. Their first gig was electric, and years later, they were performing sold-out university tours, viral performances, and racking up millions of streams. One day, Izuku made the mistake of checking Twitter. There it was, trending with 1 million views, a fan edit featuring a mashup of Emerald Riot's "Collapse Quietly" with Ground Zero's "Crack the Core." The emotional timing of the layered lyrics struck him deeply. The caption read, "What if Detonation Heart never broke up?" Izuku couldn't help but hit play again, hearing his own voice woven with Katsuki's, a harmony they hadn't sung together in 4 years. He was startled when Jairu leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "We're going to be late for the airport. You coming or what?" "Alright," he yelped, scrambling to grab his things. Jairu narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "Were you?" "I wasn't," he exclaimed too quickly. "Let's go." He rushed out, his face burning with embarrassment. Jairu watched him leave, sighing softly. She could have sworn she heard Ground Zero's beat playing from his phone. The world knew them now. Ground Zero, Japan's explosive rock powerhouse, had just wrapped up a whirlwind tour with sold-out arenas and a legion of die-hard fans. Their final show in Osaka had left the stage scorched, both figuratively and literally. Just as the last echoes of their encore faded, Emerald Riot had officially landed in Japan, invited to perform at Tokyo Amplify 2025, one of the biggest stages for top artists around the world. Izuku had second thoughts about returning. Coming back to Japan meant one thing: the possibility of crossing paths with that volatile human grenade again. But his bandmates were relentless, reminding him it was for the fans and good for exposure. Now, Izuku stood just off the runway at Narita Airport, hoodie pulled up and sunglasses on, but the press still spotted him. Cameras flashed, and fans screamed their name. He paused to wave, a practiced smile slipping onto his face. It felt surreal. For years ago, he left with nothing but a backpack, demo recordings, and a heart broken by a final studio fight. Now, Emerald Riot was topping charts in the U.S., praised for their poetic lyricism and haunting soundscapes. And now, he was back where it all began, in the city where Ground Zero still ruled. The van hummed softly along the expressway, headlights cutting through Tokyo's familiar skyline. Neon signs flashed past too fast to read, too bright to look at directly. Inside, the mood was quiet. Izuku stared out the window, chin resting on his hand, hoodie still pulled up like a shield. His phone sat face down in his lap, he hadn't touched it since the airport. In the back seat, Tokoyami scrolled silently through his tablet, a pair of noise-canceling headphones around his neck, eyes half-lidded but focused. Todoroki sat beside him, arms crossed, watching the road with his usual blank expression. Jairu sat beside the driver. After adjusting the volume on the radio for the third time, she finally sighed and turned in her seat to face Izuku. "You've been way too quiet," she said. Izuku blinked and turned toward her slowly, startled. "Huh. I'm just tired, I guess." She raised a brow. Tired doesn't usually come with that level of brooding. Izuku looked away, mouth twitching like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. She pressed gently, but firmly this time. "Izuku. Still nothing. Is it about Bakugo?" That got him. "What?" "No." His voice cracked, way too fast, too defensive. Even Tokoyami looked up from his tablet. That sounded like a yes. Todoroki turned fully now, eyebrow raised. "So it is." "I said no." Izuku groaned and dropped his head into his hands. "Why does everyone think that?" "Because your ears turned red the moment Jairu said his name," Tokoyami murmured. "I can literally hear your pulse spike," Jairu added, tapping her ear jack. Izuku groaned louder. "You guys SCK. We're your band," Todoroki said blandly. "It's in the job description." Jairu chuckled softly, then nudged him with her elbow. "Come on. Just talk to us." Izuku sighed. "I'm just tired." "Bullshit," she said, not unkindly. Todoroki, seated behind the driver, glanced sideways. "This isn't just jet lag." Izuku kept his eyes out the window, unwilling to face them. "I'm fine." Jairu leaned her elbow on the console, watching Izuku with a sharp look only someone who'd known him before the fallout could give. "It's our first show in Japan, and you've been wound up since the airport. You flinched when the radio played Ground Zero. You didn't even hum along." "You know I don't hum to them," Izuku muttered. "You used to," Todoroki said quietly. Izuku's shoulders stiffened. Silence again. Then finally, through clenched teeth, he spoke. He was difficult. Jairu stayed quiet. All those years he was always yelling, always trying to control everything. Like he had something to prove. "I wrote half the songs, but did he ever say thank you?" "No. It was always his band. His rules. His way. You wrote the best songs when you were mad at him," Tokoyami offered, deadpan. Izuku shot him a flat look. "Not the point." Todoroki leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the seat in front of him. "So, what is the point?" Izuku's jaw clenched. His fingers curled into the hem of his hoodie. "That I finally got out. I left. I made something real with you guys. I don't even want anything to do with him." Nobody said anything. Not right away. Then Jairu calm as ever asked, "So why are you shaking?" Izuku looked down. His hands were trembling in his lap. "Barely. But enough." He swallowed hard. I just don't want to see his face plastered all over Tokyo. That's all. Too bad, Todoroki said, pointing out the window. They were passing a massive digital billboard. Ground Zero's logo blazed in red and gold. And there he was, Katsuki Bakugo, screaming into a mic, eyes wild, sweat glinting on his skin under the lights. Izuku looked away. Really tough, Todoroki added flatly. You'll be breathing the same backstage air next week. Izuku's spine stiffened. Better rehearse your emotional damage control, Jiraiya said, trying not to chuckle. Even as Izuku rolled his eyes, he could feel the heat building in his chest, the same heat he thought he'd buried 4 years ago. Rage. Regret. Something dangerously close to longing. They were back in the same city. And whether he liked it or not, the past was tuning itself for an encore. At the Roppongi Hills penthouse, Ground Zero tour after-party, the atmosphere was lively. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed off Tokyo's skyline, the base of Ground Zero's latest single rattling the champagne in overpriced glasses. Purple lights, designer suits, influencers, and free-flowing cocktails filled the space. In the darkest booth, arms crossed and hoodie up like he wanted to fight the furniture, sat Katsuki Bakugo, scowling. He regretted agreeing to this party about 2 minutes after walking in. His bandmates were having the time of their lives, which only made things worse. Denki Kaminari was on his third electric blue cocktail, eyes glassy as he vibed. Shiro Hanta lounged with shrimp tempura and a wicked grin, while Kurashima Ijuru was doing his best to babysit them both, but even he was a couple beers in and grinning too wide. Katsuki looked like someone had poured vinegar in his drink. Then it happened. The massive LED screen above the bar lit up with an ad, green and black, loud and impossible to ignore. Emerald Riot is here in Japan. Tokyo Amplify 2025 TO feature both Ground Zero and Emerald Riot on the same stage. Izuku Midoriya's face filled the screen, bathed in spotlight, curls bouncing, voice echoing into a sea of screaming fans. Kaminari squinted and nearly dropped his drink. Bro. He jabbed a finger at the screen. Bro, it's him. Katsuki didn't even blink. Shut up before I throw you off this balcony. He got hotter, Kaminari whispered reverently. Shiro barked a laugh and plopped down beside Bakugo, mouth full of sushi. Oh, someone's gonna break a mic stand tonight. I'm not mad, idiot, Katsuki growled. You just look like you're mentally strangling the LED screen, Kurashima pointed out, sliding a normal-colored drink toward him. Here. No green. Thought you might punch me if it matched the promo. Bakugo snatched the glass and muttered, goddamn right. Hey, remember how this band started? Shiro mused, leaning back. Kaminari electrocuted the wrong outlet and fried half the studio, then somehow joined. I said I was testing the vibe. Kaminari shouted. You nearly burned the building down. Katsuki snapped. And then Shiro showed up with a burrito and never left, Kurashima added. I didn't plan to be in a band, Shiro shrugged. I was just here for the snacks. Next thing I knew, Katsuki was throwing guitars. I threw it once. Into the audience. It was a soft throw. It broke a chair. Katsuki slammed his drink down. Why are we reliving the past? Because he's back, Kaminari said, still staring at the promo playing again. The Riot Emerald. Emerald Riot. Whatever. That name sounds like a perfume and a threat. Yeah, they'll be playing here, Kurashima reminded softly. In Japan. Same stage, dude. The silence that fell wasn't solemn. Just charged. Bakugo stood up so fast his glass nearly toppled. I'm going outside, Bakugo announced as he made his way toward the balcony. To breathe? Shiro asked. To scream? Kaminari guessed. To cry in the hallway? Shiro added. Bakugo responded with a dismissive gesture as he left. God, I love him, Kaminari said dreamily. Dude, Zero replied flatly. You say that about every unhinged person you meet. Kirishima, glancing at the screen one last time, quietly wondered, you think they'll talk when they see each other? Kaminari hiccuped. Nah. They're gonna throw punches first. Zero nodded. Or instruments. Or feelings, Kirishima muttered to himself. Katsuki glanced at the massive LED screen above, where Midoriya Izuku stood, spotlight illuminating his hair, head tipped back mid-note, pouring emotion into the crowd. As Katsuki stomped out of the penthouse, muttering under his breath, the door closed behind him, muffling the sound of Emerald Riot's music rising in the background. When the invitation for Tokyo Amplify 2025 arrived, official and loud, Katsuki didn't let the manager finish. Hell no. Zero raised an eyebrow. You didn't even look at the lineup. I don't need to, Katsuki muttered, already walking away. I'm not wasting my time on some overpriced music circus. Oh, Kaminari said, amusement in his voice. So it's not the stage that's the problem. It's that Emerald Riot is on the lineup. Kirishima's grin widened. Or more accurately, Midoriya Izuku is. Shut your DMN mouths. Katsuki snapped. You're scared, Kaminari teased, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Scared to breathe the same air as your emotionally loaded ex-bandmate. What even are you two? Seriously, Zero added, deadpan. Exes. Rivals. An untuned love song with unresolved chords. I said shut up. Katsuki barked, slamming both hands on the table. We weren't even friends back then. They all stared at him amused and smug. They were baiting him, and of course, he bit. Fine, he barked. We'll perform. Sign us up. Headliners. Main stage. They're happy. Zero leaned back smugly. Yup. Kaminari raised his glass. Cheers to emotional damage. Kirishima laughed into his hoodie sleeve. You walked straight into it, bro. Katsuki wasn't nervous, he just wanted to prove them wrong, even if it meant seeing Izuku Midoriya again. The same messy curls, the emerald green spotlight, and that voice he once heard harmonizing beside him in a campus music room. He remembered the last time they shared a mic, the tension, the fight, the door slamming shut for good. Katsuki hadn't seen him since, only through screens, and it frustrated him. Not because Izuku was doing well, but because even now, when Katsuki should have felt on top of the world, he still thought about him. Rehearsal day arrived, and Izuku couldn't stop bouncing his knee, the motion making subtle thuds against the seat. Jiraiya noticed and gave him a gentle nudge with her boot, grounding him. They hadn't even stepped on stage yet, but the static in the air was palpable. Across the venue, Ground Zero's final chord split the room open like a thunderclap. Katsuki held the note a little too long, his palm crashing down with more force than necessary. Fix that monitor, he snapped at the sound tech. Or I'll throw it into the crowd. The tech nodded furiously, knowing better than to argue. Ground Zero's rehearsal had gone well, but the tension radiating from their lead was thick. Katsuki stormed off stage, jaw clenched, mic still gripped in his fist. From behind, Zero chuckled low. Cue the tension in 3. 2, right on cue, Kirishima's voice cracked mid-yell as he barreled down the hallway. Jiraiya. Izuku. He threw himself at both of them in a bone-crushing group hug. You're here, he practically sobbed. Holy CRP, you guys look awesome. Jiraiya, your hair. Izuku, your arms. Since when? Jiraiya laughed into his shoulder. You big sap. Izuku managed a tight smile. Hey, Kirishima, then the moment shattered. What the hell is this? Katsuki's voice sliced through the backstage chatter. He had stopped halfway down the ramp, eyes locked on the scene in front of him, Kirishima with his arms around Izuku and Jiraiya. Izuku was laughing, smiling, like nothing ever happened. Katsuki's expression hardened. Didn't know we were doing a reunion. Shiro and Kaminari exchanged glances from the wings but stayed put. They knew that tone, this wasn't their moment to defuse. You've got something to say? Izuku asked quietly, stepping forward. Their eyes locked, the air charged with unspoken history. Anyway, I'm not here to fight, Izuku added softly. We're professionals. We need to rehearse. Katsuki scoffed. Funny. You ran last time we rehearsed. Bakugo, Jiraiya warned under her breath. But it was too late. The jab hit, and Izuku flinched. Kirishima stepped between them again. Okay. That's enough. We're not doing this now. Katsuki gave him an unreadable look before turning on his heel. Don't be late for sound check, Deku. He walked off, shoulders tight, fists clenched. Behind him, Emerald Riot stood frozen in the sudden quiet. Izuku didn't answer, he just stared after him, jaw set, eyes unreadable. Katsuki's footsteps echoed down the hallway long after he disappeared. No one moved, even the sound crew lingered awkwardly, pretending to adjust dials. Jiraiya ran a hand through her hair, exhaling sharply. I thought we were past that. Izuku still hadn't spoken. His hand hung loosely by his side, fingertips brushing his thigh as he tried to ground himself. Kirishima turned back to them, his usual smile dimmer now. Sorry, guys. I got a little excited. No, Izuku shook his head, voice raw. Don't apologize. It's good to see you. I missed you. Kirishima's smile softened. But the moment shifted when all three of their phones buzzed. Shiro sighed, glancing down. Yep. That's our cue. He's already pacing. Nice finally meeting you, Kaminari added, winking at Jiraiya. Especially you. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Dial it down, Rockstar. Kirishima laughed, but his eyes lingered on Izuku one last time. Break a leg. Then they were gone, and the air left behind was thick with silence and everything that hadn't been said. Izuku's shoulders sagged slightly. Well, that could have been worse. Todoroki took a step closer, his gaze focused on Izuku. You alright? He asked, his voice low. Izuku blinked at the unexpected softness. I'm fine. Just nerves. Someone backstage shouted, Emerald Riot, 3 minutes. Izuku took a breath and turned to his band. Let's get out there. Todoroki's hand brushed against his arm before he stepped back, a silent reassurance. Jiraiya and Tokoyami flanked them on either side, tuning up and shaking off the tension. One day before Tokyo Amplify 2025, the main stage was an impressive structure, towering over the crews busy with sound equipment and LED panels. Every spotlight seemed to hum with anticipation. Tokyo Amplify wasn't just a concert, it was a test of endurance. Push that riser 2 inches to the left. Katsuki instructed the tech team firmly. It's off-center. I'm not performing with my foot halfway in the pit. Behind him, Shiro quietly commented, he's really intense today. Festival's tomorrow, Kirishima replied casually. Of course he's feeling the pressure. Kaminari leaned in with a playful grin, no, this isn't just festival pressure. This is Midoriya's return to Tokyo tension. I will make sure your shoes are ruined, Katsuki shot back without looking. The crew continued their work, but the tension in the air was palpable, as if they were all balancing on a tightrope with a storm approaching. Izuku gripped the mic stand tightly, rehearsing in his mind the countless times he had practiced. But here, it felt like Katsuki was watching him even when he wasn't in the room. You're holding your breath again, Jiraiya said softly, adjusting his in-ear monitor. I'm fine, Izuku replied quickly. No, you're preloading trauma like it's part of the setlist, Todoroki remarked. I said I'm fine, Izuku snapped, louder than he intended. Silence filled the room. Tokoyami raised an eyebrow. Hostility. Noted. Izuku took a deep breath and turned toward the mic. Let's run it again. Later, in the press lounge, bright lights buzzed softly over the modern setup, every surface reflecting fractured smiles. PR teams moved about, handing out itineraries and whispering phrases like, just one more interview, and, keep it clean, no scandals, not today. Photographers flitted between booths, cameras clicking like a ticking clock. Izuku sat on a sleek velvet bench with Emerald Riot, his back stiff and knuckles white around a bottled water he hadn't touched. His leg bounced nervously as he tried not to look across the room, but he failed. Katsuki was there, sitting in a corner booth, draped in black, his bomber jacket casually resting on his shoulders, exuding confidence. A host approached them. Could we get a quick joint photo? Just for promo. Katsuki didn't even look at him. No, he snapped, his tone final. The host blinked, taken aback. Ah, right, perhaps just one. Shoot us separate, Katsuki added, his teeth gritted. Or not at all. The host turned to Izuku, the weight of the moment falling on his shoulders. He didn't hesitate. Same here, he said flatly, his voice calm but his grip on the bottle tightening. The host chuckled nervously. Right. Sure. Not a problem. The cameras flashed regardless. In the background, Kaminari whispered, they're gonna combust. God, I hope so, Zero muttered. It'd be cathartic. A reporter smiled between them, seemingly oblivious. It's a dream lineup for fans tonight. Ground Zero and Emerald Riot are performing in Tokyo Amplify tomorrow. What's it like being back together? Must be a little nostalgic, right? Katsuki let out a low snort and leaned in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. We're here to perform, not to reconnect. Izuku managed a tight smile. Nostalgic. Sure, if you count arguing over sound checks and whose name goes first on the poster. Katsuki scoffed, arms crossed. My name always goes first. Alphabetical, dumbass. Right, G comes before E now. Ground Zero comes before everyone. You keep telling yourself that. They both smirked, neither backing down. The reporter laughed awkwardly. Ah. So, no reunion album in the works, then. Izuku smiled politely. Unless it's a diss track. Katsuki barked a dry laugh. Great. I'll write the hook. You can handle the verses. Izuku didn't flinch. Better than screaming so loud your lyrics need subtitles. Katsuki leaned back with a smirk. Still easier to understand than your metaphors. Izuku's smile sharpened. Funny. Thought you couldn't understand anything that wasn't shouted at you. The tension crackled between them. Wow. So much history here. You two must have been really close, the reporter remarked. In unison, they both replied, we weren't. Kaminari cackled, Jiro looked mortified, and Todoroki facepalmed. Kirishima mouthed, abort, at the PA, Tokoyami quietly sipped his iced coffee, observing the scene. Tomorrow was the show. 2 legacies. One stage big enough for both. Izuku sighed, his eyes drifting to the stage schedule pinned to the corkboard. He just had to get through this. One more night. After this, there'd be no more Katsuki Bakugo. No more backstage encounters. No more rehearsals in the same city. No more glances that felt like they meant something. After this, he would be back in the States, swallowed by fame and arenas far away. Back to normal. Back to pretending this all meant nothing. Chapter 4, Amped up and barely civil festival day, backstage holding room. The green room smelled of hairspray, anxiety, and overpriced energy drinks. Ground Zero had claimed one corner. Zero was fixing his guitar strap, pretending Katsuki wasn't on edge. Kaminari scrolled on his phone, smoothing his hair for the 5th time. Kirishima drummed the edge of a crate, expression serious. Across the room, Emerald Riot lounged with forced calm. Izuku adjusted his mic pack for the 3rd time. Jairu tuned her guitar, foot tapping. Todoroki leaned against a rack of stage coats, seemingly unfazed. Tokoyami muttered something about the abyss of rhythm. Then Kaminari, with a grin, sauntered across the room. Hey, Jairu. So, after this, you wanna grab food or emotionally recover together? He wiggled his eyebrows. She didn't even look up. No. Kaminari staggered back dramatically. Cold. Brutal, Kirishima whispered. She's being nice today, Todoroki remarked. Izuku was double-checking his synth cables when the dressing room door slammed open, rattling the mirrors. Katsuki stormed in, scowl already in place. He barely glanced at Izuku before sneering, still using that gear. Thought you'd have leveled up by now. Izuku didn't flinch. Didn't realize you'd be early. What happened, Kaken? Someone finally told you what punctual means. Oof, Shiro whispered. Katsuki crossed his arms, jaw tight. Making sure you don't spiral before curtain call. You've got a track record. Jairu muttered under her breath, here we go. Izuku turned slowly, raising an eyebrow. Pretty sure we remember you knocking over a monitor and calling it stage presence. Kaminari wheezed. Bro. Kirishima instinctively stood between them, but neither budged. Alright, at least I bring energy, Katsuki growled. You just stand there pretending your MIDI pads are feelings. At least I don't scream like a blender on fire, Izuku replied calmly. Real emotion doesn't need distortion to sell. The room tensed. Todoroki looked up from his coffee, as if watching a car crash in slow motion. Katsuki stepped forward. Careful, Deku. People might start thinking you're still bitter. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Oh, I'm not. I just can't hear your voice without my ears filing a restraining order. Jairu covered her face. Oh my god. Shiro sighed, we're gonna need security. Kaminari was already recording. No, keep going, this is peak content. Denki, Jairu hissed. A knock broke through the tension. Ground zero 10 minutes to sound check. Katsuki didn't look away. Hope you brought your A-game, Deku. Izuku smiled coolly. I don't need it to outshine you, Katsuki said with a snort before walking out, his shoulder brushing against Izuku's in a deliberate manner. Silence filled the room. Tokoyami adjusted his guitar strap. We should prepare, he suggested. Todoroki nodded, taking a sip of his drink. Before someone ends up in trouble. Jairu glanced at Izuku. You good? Izuku exhaled, his gaze still on the door. Peachy, he replied, his hand shaking slightly as he turned back to his setup. The crowd was screaming even before the lights hit. Bass rolled in first deep and thunderous. Then a strobe flash. A wall of distorted guitar split the air in half. Ground Zero exploded onto the stage. Shiro bounded in, throwing up his arms with a wild grin. Kaminari launched sparks from his fingers like stage pyrotechnics, already headbanging as he plugged in. Kirishima spun his sticks once, hit the snare, and the beat dropped like a punch to the chest. And then Katsuki stormed on stage. Leather jacket open, boots heavy, that signature snarl curled on his face as he dared the crowd to look away. The roar tripled. He grabbed the mic stand with one hand and pulled it toward him. Tokyo, wake the hell up. The crowd erupted, mosh pits opening before the first lyric. This one's called Centuries. He smirked. You wanna know how you'll remember us? He pointed to the roaring audience. Like this. Heavy riffs kicked in. War drums. Katsuki's voice tore through every speaker like fire and broken glass. Some legends are told, some turn to dust or to gold, but you will remember me. Remember me for centuries. Izuku stood backstage with Emerald Riot, blinking against the strobe lights and smoke. His stomach dropped. Katsuki didn't just sing, he dominated. Izuku glued his eyes to the stage, jaw tight. He hated this part not because Ground Zero was bad, but because they were so good. Because Katsuki was so good. And I can't stop till the whole world knows my name, 'cause I was only born inside my dreams. Until you die for me, as long as there's a light. That voice louder, older, sharper than the kid who used to scream in a college gym. That stage presence commanding, magnetic. He hadn't just kept the fire, he'd weaponized it. Katsuki Bakugo had always burned, but now he owned it. For a second, just a second, Izuku forgot to breathe. Jiraiya glanced sideways. He's really going for it. Tokoyami nodded solemnly. It's appropriately apocalyptic. Izuku didn't answer. His hands clenched at his sides. He remembered the first time Katsuki ever sang that hard back in the dusty old music room of UA, when they were just college kids with dreams and duct-taped pedals. Katsuki had made their band good, too. That was the worst part. He shook his head hard, banishing the thought. Because this time, Emerald Riot was his, and they were next. Katsuki didn't miss a beat. He stalked the edge of the stage like a storm barely leashed, hair wild, sweat slicked under the spotlight. His voice cracked with grit and fury, and it only made the crowd scream louder. Izuku's jaw clenched. He couldn't take his eyes off him. Couldn't look away from how Katsuki moved, like he owned every inch of the stage, like the whole world was lucky just to watch him burn. And God, he looked good. The black tank clung to his skin, backlit by smoke and golden light, muscle and motion and that impossible edge that had always set him apart. His ash-blonde hair was damp, half falling into his eyes, and he whipped it back with a jerk of his head, cocky and alive. Izuku hated it. Hated that his chest was tight. Hated that he remembered exactly what it felt like to stand next to him while the crowd screamed like this. Todoroki elbowed him gently. You good? Izuku didn't answer. He was too busy watching Katsuki lean in, roaring into the mic like a dare. Behind him, Kaminari caught the cue without missing a beat, sliding into backing vocals that punched through the mix, sharp and charged. We've been here forever, and here's the frozen proof. The entire arena echoed. Hands in the air. Claps in perfect sync. Voices rising like thunder. The lights flared in red and gold, smoke curling around Ground Zero like the stage was on fire, and Katsuki stood dead center, head tilted back, arms wide, like he was drinking it in. The moment. The power. The worship. I could scream forever. We are the poisoned youth. Izuku felt it like a punch in the chest. Goosebumps broke out across his arms. Katsuki's voice was raw now, frayed at the edges, blistering with emotion, and somehow that made it better. Realer. Dangerous. DMN, Izuku muttered under his breath. Jiraiya side-eyed him. He didn't even pretend to deny it this time. They were good. Too good. They were making history. DMN, Tokoyami whispered. They sound like they're trying to start a war. They might win, Todoroki added, sipping his drink with eerie calm. Katsuki leaned into the final note, roaring into the mic before the lights slammed to black. You will remember me, for centuries. The stage vibrated. The crowd detonated screams, stomps, chants of Ground Zero. Ground Zero. The lights strobed once more in red and white, a parting shot, as Katsuki tossed the mic behind him. It hit the floor with a crack. He was drenched in sweat, breathing hard, lips curled into a feral grin. Kaminari raised both arms and bowed deep, soaking up the electricity of the moment. Kirishima threw his sticks into the air and caught them behind his back, flashing a peace sign toward the audience. Zero jogged to center stage beside Katsuki, flexed both arms to the crowd, then clapped Katsuki on the back. "Hell yeah," he shouted, grinning. Katsuki didn't respond. He was already turning his head, looking for Izuku, who stood in the wings, still frozen in place. When he found him, he smirked, not just cocky, not just smug. It was like he'd just planted a flag right in Izuku's chest. Izuku's spine straightened. His lungs pulled tight. His fingers crushed the edge of his setlist. He hated how hot his BLD ran. How Katsuki looked under the lights, sweat and fire and talent all rolled into one impossible body. The crowd was still screaming. Katsuki gave Izuku one last glance, slow, sharp. Then he walked off stage without another word, shoulders squared, victory in every step. Behind him, Ground Zero soaked up the praise like it was oxygen. Izuku exhaled through his nose. Fine. Let them have their little firework. Because now it was Emerald Riot's turn to burn the whole sky down. The moment Ground Zero disappeared behind the curtain, the crowd was still screaming, wild, breathless, hungry for more. But then the lights dropped. A thick bass thrummed underfoot. Fog rolled across the stage, and a voice echoed through the stadium speakers, announcing, "Please welcome Emerald Riot. Make some noise." The crowd erupted, a surge of green light bursting across the stage like lightning. Backstage, Izuku inhaled slowly, turning to his band, Jiraiya tapping her mic, Tokoyami rolling his shoulders, and Todoroki calm as ever. "Hey," Izuku said, his voice steady. "We got this." Jiraiya grinned, ready to give it their all. Todoroki nodded in agreement. The stage manager waved, signaling it was showtime. They stepped into the roar of the crowd, thousands of hands in the air, screams shaking the barricades, and emerald green light flooding the stadium. Izuku approached the mic, looking into the sea of people with sharp green eyes. "Tokyo," he yelled, a grin breaking through. "We've been dreaming about this moment for years," the crowd roared in response. "Our first time playing in Japan, our home." He pressed a hand to his chest. "Thanks for showing up. Let's make it count." The lights cut out, and a hush fell over the crowd, a low, echoing hum like distant thunder. A single spotlight flared green and ghost-like. Izuku stood in it, head bowed, mic in hand. Drums hit slow, heavy, deliberate. Jiraiya plucked her guitar with eerie precision, and Todoroki tapped out the rhythm on the snare. Then, Izuku lifted his head, and the crowd screamed. "How do you fall in love? Harder than a bullet could hit ya." His voice was sultry and unhurried, like a whispered confession. "How do we fall apart faster than a hairpin trigger?" The words flowed through the mic, and Katsuki, from the side stage, felt a jolt in his spine. He clenched his jaw, feeling the intensity of Izuku's voice. Izuku was right at the edge of the stage now, fingers gripping the mic stand, green eyes glinting under the lights. Behind him, the band surged. Tokoyami's drums thrummed low and steady, each beat deliberate and powerful. Todoroki's bass shimmered cold and sharp beneath it, building tension like fog before a storm. Jiraiya's electric guitar snarled at the edges, waiting to break loose. Katsuki stepped forward into the wings, feeling the rhythm sync with his pulse. Izuku was captivating the audience, and he knew it. Izuku held his breath on the last line, "So shut your mouth and run me like a river." The chorus hit like a wave crashing through glass. "Shut your mouth, baby, stand and deliver, holy hands, oh they make me a sinner," the crowd roared, singing the lyrics back as Izuku poured himself into every line, moving with the pulse, sweat gleaming under the lights. He was fire in motion, pure velocity. Kaminari's jaw dropped. "Bro, when did Deku get that hot on stage?" Zero let out a low whistle. Kirishima grinned, nudging Katsuki. "Yeah. And he's throwing it straight at you, man." Izuku's voice cut through the haze. "Choke this love till the veins start to shiver, one last breath till the tears start to wither." He was glowing under the spotlight, eyes blazing, voice raw and alive. Katsuki watched, arms crossed tightly. "He's killing it," Kirishima muttered, almost in awe. Katsuki scoffed, but deep down, he couldn't deny it. Izuku spun into the final chorus, hair wild, breath ragged, voice cracking beautifully as he howled, like a river. The crowd screamed as lights flashed and smoke poured across the stage. The final note hit, then vanished, leaving Katsuki momentarily stunned. Izuku stood center stage, chest heaving, adrenaline coursing through him. Behind him, Tokoyami tossed a drumstick in the air, Gyro saluted the crowd, and Todoroki walked off with his usual cool demeanor. As Izuku turned to follow, he spotted Katsuki. "You guys ate." Shiro grinned. Kirishima slung an arm around Izuku's shoulder. Actually left no crumbs. Kaminari added, "Honestly didn't think anyone could follow us after our opener, but, DMN. Katsuki snapped, "It was cute. You guys played like you had something to prove." Izuku straightened, responding, "And you played like you were already crowned." A flash of tension passed between them, old bitterness resurfacing. Katsuki smirked. "Let's see how long you keep up." Izuku didn't flinch. "We're not just keeping up. We're ahead." Katsuki snorted, "You wish," and walked off toward the dressing rooms. Izuku headed in the opposite direction, leaving a heavy silence behind. Kirishima coughed, breaking the tension. "That's not awkward at all," Kaminari added. "Are they gonna fistfight or kiss?" Shiro muttered under his breath. Gyro passed by, earbuds in, unfazed. "Neither." Ground Zero after-party. The bass thudded from the speakers, the club dim with neon and heat. Katsuki sat at the far end of the VIP lounge, drink in hand, eyes unfocused. Just noise. Bodies. Flashing lights. Kirishima plopped down beside him, 2 drinks in hand. "You're welcome," he said, handing one over. Katsuki grunted, "Don't need babysitting." "You do when your jaw's that tight, bro." Kirishima leaned back. "They were good, huh?" Katsuki didn't answer. "Izuku especially," Kirishima added. Still silence. Kirishima chuckled. "You always had that look when he sang. Like you wanted to punch something and kiss something at the same time." Katsuki's glare deepened. "Drop it." Kirishima spoke up carefully, voice low. "You ever miss it? Singing with him?" "Not at all." Katsuki shot back a little too quickly. "Didn't miss the drama. Or ego. Or that mic of his. So you have been thinking about it." Katsuki growled, "Get lost." Emerald Riot after-party. Their rented loft was quieter. Cozy lights strung across the ceiling, old records spinning on a player. Gyro sat cross-legged on the couch, guitar still within reach. Izuku leaned against the kitchen island, nursing a bottle of wine. Izuku reached for his phone, mostly to distract himself. Big mistake. Right there front and center on a sponsored post. Ground Zero. Bold, red, and loud. Katsuki's face was plastered front and center, spotlight hitting his sharp grin just right. His stomach did a slow, annoyed flip. He locked the screen with a little too much force and set the phone face down. Gyro glanced up. "What was that?" "Nothing," Izuku muttered, grabbing his soda again. His jaw was tight. His mood sunk. Hard. "They're good," she said finally. "Good as hell, actually." Izuku scoffed, eyes still on the condensation sliding down his drink. "You sound surprised." "I'm not. Just honest." She leaned back into the couch cushions. "Bakugo's always been a beast on stage." The others leveled up too. He didn't respond. She side-eyed him. "You're annoyed because you agree." Izuku grumbled into his drink, "I'm annoyed because I don't care." Gyro raised a brow, amused. "Right. You totally don't. Silence. Do you miss it? Izuku glanced up from his drink. Ha. She tilted her head toward the window toward the glowing venue lights still visible in the distance. Being in a band with him. Izuku scoffed softly, a sharp breath through his nose. Please. I don't miss the yelling. Or the tantrums. Or how he always thought he knew best. Gyro arched an eyebrow, still not looking at him. Right. Not even a little. He crossed his arms tighter, staring down at the fizz in his soda. No. It was tough. She didn't press. Just strummed again low, quiet chords. A beat passed. Then, softer, less defense, more truth. I love what we have now. Emerald Riot feels like home. Like music's supposed to. Gyro smiled and nodded. And Izuku didn't say another word. But he hadn't taken his eyes off that window. Chapter 5, Trending Trouble. After the festival, both bands were trending within hours. #Ground Riot had broken containment, flooding timelines across fan accounts and music blogs alike. Edits. Memes. Fancams. Izuku winced every time he opened his socials because without fail, some enthusiastic fan with editing talent had posted another ship edit. And some of them. Way too good. Like, embarrassingly good. High-res photos. Stage lights. Perfect angles. Captions like, come back soon. Rivals to lovers speedrun. Or the worst one yet, he never stopped looking at him. He'd scroll faster. Pretend his heart didn't skip at one particularly dramatic fan edit of him looking across the stage at Katsuki with a slowed-down audio playing in the background. Unreal, he muttered to himself. Now, the fan meet. Izuku had his smile locked in place, posture calm, answers rehearsed. But it wasn't long before the questions started slipping through the cracks. A girl in a Ground Zero hoodie stepped up, wide eyes shimmering. I just wanna know, Deku, sorry, Izuku, what was it like seeing your ex-bandmate again live? Gyro visibly choked on her water beside him. Izuku blinked. It was loud. Cue laughter from the crowd. He forced a grin. Another fan leaned in eagerly. Are you guys ever gonna collab? Even just one song? Emerald Riot and Ground Zero together would break the internet. I think we're doing a decent job of that already, Izuku replied smoothly, taking a sip from his drink. Without the collab. Todoroki gave him a slow blink of approval. Izuku slumped onto the backstage couch, feeling as if he had just escaped a war zone. With his head back and eyes shut, he felt utterly drained. Wow, you survived, Gyro said as she dropped beside him, tossing a sweat towel in his direction. He dramatically flopped the towel over his eyes. Barely. I think I lost years of my life every time someone asked about my spark with Kaken. You say that after every fan meet, Tokoyami remarked, setting down a box of signed merchandise with his usual calm demeanor. Yet here you are. The door creaked open, and Todoroki entered, holding 2 water bottles as if he were hosting a wellness retreat. He handed one to Izuku, their fingers brushing for just a moment longer than necessary. Oh, thanks, Shoto, Izuku said, peeking up at him. You looked like you were about to pass out, Todoroki replied, his tone gentle, which only added to Izuku's flustered state. Izuku managed a weak smile. I think I blacked out during the 3rd round of Who's Your Bias in Ground Zero. Todoroki tilted his head, genuinely confused. What does bias mean? Izuku took a long swig of water to mask his embarrassment. Gyro raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Seriously, though. You and Shoto need to cut it out. Cut what out? Izuku asked, bewildered. The tension, she said, emphasizing her words. The accidental hand brushes. The hair ruffle. I what know, Izuku stammered, his eyes wide. Tokoyami nodded in agreement. It was louder than the screaming fans. Todoroki, with a straight face, replied, I was just handing him water. Yeah, Jiraiya smirked. And Romeo was just talking to Juliet. Izuku groaned, pressing the water bottle to his face. Why are you all like this? Because it's fun, Jiraiya said. Also, the fans already think you two are dating. Might as well enjoy the attention. Izuku sighed, while Todoroki remained unfazed, simply shrugging. Jiraiya leaned back, casually adding, they're shipping me with Kaminari again. Wait, seriously? Izuku squinted. She held up her phone, showing him a fan edit of her and Kaminari photoshopped into a wedding scene, complete with sparklers and Kaminari in a purple tux. I blinked at him once during soundcheck, Jiraiya explained. Now apparently we're engaged. Tokoyami peered over and muttered, they even made a hashtag. Hashtag Kamijiraiya is real, Jiraiya said flatly. Izuku burst out laughing. Okay, that one's actually good. Don't encourage them, she warned. Do you know how many DMs I've gotten asking if I'm PRGN? Izuku choked. What? She shot him a look. Exactly. You think you have it bad with BKDK? I'm getting fake LTRSND edits. Izuku wheezed into his towel. Anyway, get it together, Jiraiya said, crossing her arms. We've got that podcast thing tomorrow. Izuku perked up, suspicious. Wait. Which podcast? The one with the host who loves to stir the pot, she replied. You know, constantly brings up fan edits and undeniable chemistry. Todoroki blinked. We are doomed. Izuku paled. Oh my god, Jiraiya laughed. Tokoyami added calmly, also. Ground Zero's scheduled for the same segment. Silence fell over the group. Izuku bolted upright, shocked. I'm sorry, what? You didn't tell us that, Jiraiya snapped, glaring at Tokoyami. It was in the footnotes of the invite, he shrugged. Oh my god, Izuku groaned, dragging his hands down his face. He was already calculating escape plans. Do you think we can fake a power outage? This is going to be a mess, Jiraiya lamented. Ugh, we are so cooked. Tokoyami nodded. Indeed. Medium rare. Izuku couldn't fall asleep that night. The podcast with Ground Zero had been a nightmare, a PR trap wrapped in fan service. He tossed and turned for what felt like hours before finally grabbing his phone, thinking maybe some mindless scrolling would help. Big mistake. The first thing on his feed was another edit of him and Katsuki, side by side on stage, with the caption, "Still the loudest love song." He slapped the phone face down on his chest and stared at the ceiling, feeling betrayed. Just one more day. Their flight back to the States was the day after tomorrow. Then they'd be gone. Out of sight. Out of earshot. Out of his life again. He let himself breathe. He'd be fine. Eventually. The next day, the studio lights were too bright. Izuku shifted in his seat, trying to look relaxed as the podcast host grinned at them from across the table. Unmask the Musician was known for deep dives, chaotic energy, and the occasional emotional ambush. They were barely 10 minutes in when the host announced cheerfully that they had the iconic Emerald Riot and a surprise guest all the fans had been begging for. The studio door opened, and Izuku felt his heart drop. Ground Zero, the host beamed. Katsuki Bakugo walked in, looking as intense as ever in his combat boots and bomber jacket. He had that familiar expression that made Izuku's heart race, and it felt infuriatingly unfair. Behind him came Kirishima, Siro, and Kaminari, all exchanging amused glances like they knew this was going to be an absolute spectacle. Jiraiya froze mid-sip, Tokoyami exhaled deeply, and Todoroki raised a brow, slightly intrigued. Katsuki flopped into the seat across from Izuku. TCH. Could have done this over call, he said. Yeah, Izuku replied, not looking at him, but then you wouldn't get to show off that jacket in person. Katsuki's eye twitched. Didn't know I needed fashion tips from someone who looks like they haven't slept in 3 years. Izuku rolled his eyes. He hadn't slept well last night. Okay, the host cut in, half laughing, half terrified. First off, huge congratulations to Emerald Riot and Ground Zero for that insane Tokyo Amplify 2025 performance. You've basically broken the internet. Kaminari raised his bottle like a toast. Hell yeah, we did. But now, the host added, turning sly, let's talk about what's really got the fans excited, current relationship status. Single, Jairu said immediately, raising her bottle. For now, Kaminari winked at her, and Jairu rolled her eyes. Emotionally detached, Tokoyami added solemnly. Emotionally present, Todoroki chimed in, glancing at Izuku. Izuku's ears turned red. The host grinned. Interesting. You, Izuku. I'm focused on the band, Izuku said quickly. We've been busy. That's one way to say chronically single, Katsuki snorted. I'm single and totally available. Shiro jumped in, trying to lighten the mood. Izuku ignored him and shot back at Katsuki, oh, like you're swimming in romance. I don't need romance to dominate charts. Or maybe no one wants to date a walking landmine. Jairu groaned. Jesus Christ. Kirishima awkwardly clapped his hands once. You know, we could pivot to favorite snacks or something. Let's not, Kaminari whispered. This is better than Netflix. The host grinned. Alright, since we're going there, rumor control time. Fans have been theorizing for years. Did you two date back in college? He gestured between Izuku and Katsuki. Izuku blinked. Katsuki's jaw tightened. Not a chance, Katsuki said flatly. He's not even my type. Shiro and Kaminari both laughed. Katsuki snapped his head toward them. What's funny? Kirishima struggled to hold back his laughter. No. We did not, Izuku forced a tight smile. We just knew each other. That's all. Since childhood. Too well. Katsuki snorted. Yeah. Knew each other real well. Izuku's expression finally cracked. You wanna do this here? Really? Why not? You love being dramatic, right? Thought you'd enjoy the spotlight. Todoroki, quiet until now, shifted forward. Should we step out? Nope, Shiro said quickly. Stay. I need moral support. Kirishima leaned in toward Katsuki, voice low but urgent. Dude, not now. Seriously. The host blinked. So, what was the inspiration behind Emerald Riot's latest single, Look What You Made Me Do? Izuku didn't answer at first. Then, dryly, he said, guess. Katsuki rolled his eyes. Jairu clapped her hands. Well. We're definitely gonna go viral for this episode. Tokoyami nodded solemnly. It will be a spectacle. The host was about to ask the next question, but Katsuki leaned in, eyes blazing. You really wanna sit there and pretend you didn't write that song about me? Izuku let out a cold laugh. Here's a reality check, Kaken. Not everything revolves around your ego. Bullshit, Katsuki hissed. Don't twist this. Izuku snapped, oh, I'm sorry, does the guilt bother you that much? Shiro mouthed, wow. Kaminari's knuckles whitened on the armrest. Maybe, Izuku spat, I wrote about someone who thinks being loud counts as being real and doesn't notice the damage until it's too late. Oh, you wanna go there? Katsuki's mouth curled into a smirk. At least I never wrote a whole album whining about it like a coward. Izuku's expression hardened. Yeah. Maybe try talking like a real person for once. Enough, Todoroki said firmly, but neither of them listened. They were locked in now, the rest of the room fading away. Katsuki's voice dropped, sharp and venomous. You think you're better than me, huh? Always the victim. But who ran away? Who left? Izuku bolted upright, shaking. I just survived you. Silence hit the room like a shockwave. Todoroki's jaw clenched. I said enough. They both turned, breathing hard, wild-eyed. Kirishima leaned in toward Katsuki, voice low but urgent. Dude, not now. Seriously. This isn't where you want to do this. Katsuki scoffed. Izuku said nothing anymore, but his mic trembled in his grip. His chest rose and fell like he was holding back an explosion. The host, pale and sweating, laughed awkwardly. Well. That escalated quickly. We're going to cut to a quick, technical break. Kirishima leaned into his mic, tone flat. Cut the stream. Now. Jairu's face was flushed with anger. I swear, cut it. The off-camera producer made a slashing gesture. Stream ended. The silence in the room was suffocating. Then, in the dead quiet, Kaminari muttered, DMN, I regret waking up today. Izuku shoved the mic down and stood, face stone cold. Without a word, he stormed off stage, his boots heavy against the floor. Jairu called out, half standing, but he was already out the door. Katsuki dragged his hands down his face in frustration. He shot up, tearing his earpiece out as he followed. What's your problem? The hallway was too quiet until Katsuki's voice echoed off the walls. He caught up just outside the studio exit, grabbing Izuku's arm. Izuku jerked away. Are you really going to walk out like that? Katsuki snapped. Like you're the one who got ambushed. Izuku turned, his eyes blazing. You embarrassed me. Again. You always turn everything into a fight. You started it, Deku. Throwing shade on Live Air like you're innocent, I didn't even name you. Izuku shouted. But if the truth rattles you that much, maybe ask yourself why. The door burst open behind them as Kirishima, Shiro, Kaminari, Jairu, Tokoyami, and Todoroki scrambled out. Staff bustled around, some already recording on their phones. Guys, come on, Kaminari jogged over, trying to get between them. We're in trouble. Katsuki threw his hands up. You still have a savior complex and blame me for everything that goes wrong. Izuku's laugh was humorless. And you still think yelling louder makes you right. Some things don't change. Shiro flinched. This is really not the place, guys. Todoroki stepped forward, his voice even but firm. You two need to cool it now. Keep this up, and you're not just wrecking your reputations. You're putting your entire careers on the line, Tokoyami added. The room fell completely silent. Even Katsuki's mouth snapped shut, and Izuku's fists slowly unclenched. Todoroki didn't blink. So unless either of you wants to trend for all the wrong reasons, I suggest you breathe. No one spoke. Jairu finally broke the silence, her voice tight. Let's just, get out of here. Without a word, Izuku turned and walked toward the hallway exit, his boots echoing with every step. He didn't look back. Katsuki lingered a moment, jaw clenched, then grabbed his jacket and stormed out the opposite way. The rest of the band watched them go, stunned into silence. Then, slowly, they turned to the host, the cameras, and the remaining crew, faces pale with quiet regret. Kirishima gave a small, apologetic bow. We're really sorry about that. The others followed suit, heads lowered in silent apology. Without another word, they each turned and walked off in different directions. We're still doing the magazine shoot, right? Kaminari asked weakly. Shut up, Katsuki growled from somewhere down the hall. The hallway to the suite was silent, save for the soft hum of the elevator doors closing behind Izuku. He stood in front of their hotel room, heart pounding. His hand hovered over the door handle for a moment before he finally pushed it open. Inside, Jairu was sprawled on the couch, arms crossed tightly over her chest, earphones in but silent. Tokoyami stood by the table, his posture tense. Todoroki was by the window, arms behind his back, staring blankly out at the city skyline. They all turned when he entered. I'm so sorry, Izuku said, stepping in. Slowly, his boots unusually quiet against the carpet. What happened back there wasn't fair to any of you. I lost it. I shouldn't have brought that on live. You think? Jairu muttered, raising her brows. Izuku flinched. I know. It's just he kept pushing, and I let it get personal. That's not what we're about. That's not what Emerald Riot is about. Tokoyami tilted his head slightly. You let your emotions take the wheel, Midoriya. Understandable, but reckless. You know how much is riding on our public image right now. I know, Izuku whispered, gripping the back of a chair. I'll fix it. I'll talk to management, write a statement, take the hit. None of you should suffer for my mistake. Todoroki finally spoke, his voice cool and even. Damage control isn't your job alone. We're a band, not a solo act. But next time, his gaze sharpened, you talk to us before dragging unresolved issues onto a live mic. Izuku looked down. Yeah. You're right, I'm so sorry. Jairu leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her tone softer now. I get that things with Bakugo are messy, but we had your back today. Even when it spiraled. And I'll never stop being grateful for that, Izuku said. I'm sorry I made it harder. There was a beat of silence. Then, finally, Tokoyami gave a slow nod. We'll weather the fallout. But tomorrow, we move smart. Todoroki crossed his arms. We've got press meetings and a shoot in less than 12 hours. Clean slate. No more surprises. Izuku straightened. No more surprises. I promise. Jairu sighed, standing and heading to her room. Good. Now get some sleep before you start crying and make me emotional. The room had barely settled when all their phones buzzed at once. Izuku blinked and checked his screen. Manager, incoming call. He exchanged glances with Todoroki. Jairu's jaw clenched. Tokoyami sighed, already reaching to answer. Jairu swiped hers. Hey, the voice on the other end was sharp. Conference call. Now. All of you. Izuku winced. Todoroki put his phone on speaker. The manager's voice filled the room, clipped and fast. You've got trending clips, hashtags, and freeze-frame face zooms. You know what that means. No one spoke. The manager didn't wait. Damage control starts now. Apology drafts on your email. PR wants you quiet until we review the final cut. And for the love of God, no cryptic posts. A beat passed. Then the manager added, Izuku, Katsuki's team is calling too. There's talk of a joint statement. Izuku stared at the floor. Noted. The line went dead. Silence returned thicker than before. Tokoyami finally said, we should prepare for tomorrow. Jairu nodded. And maybe hide. No one touched the complimentary coffee. Emerald Riot was supposed to be on a flight back to L, by now, but their flight had been cancelled. The podcast incident had exploded online within minutes. Fan reactions ranged from ecstatic to furious. Edits were being posted in real time. Arguments were trending. So now here they were, two exhausted bands, emotionally drained, corralled into this cold room by management teams with visibly fraying nerves. And sitting across from him, with arms crossed and jaw set, was Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku did not look at him. How do we keep ending up in the same room? Kaminari muttered under his breath, slouching. Jairu elbowed him. Not the time. At the head of the table, their managers stood like generals. One of them cleared their throat. We're going to keep this short, ER's manager began, sharp gaze sweeping over all of them. The video's gone viral. Labels are panicking. Sponsors are watching. And you too, she pointed between Katsuki and Izuku, and sighed. Katsuki leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. Izuku didn't look up. GZ's manager stepped in next. We're not here to scold. We're here to fix this. We need a joint statement, one that looks civil, ideally mature. That rules us out, Gyro mumbled. Kaminari tried not to laugh and failed, earning another jab from Gyro. The next few days are critical. You've got millions of eyes on you, sponsors holding their breath, and fans turning your fight into a meme war. Tokoyami spoke, voice calm. Can I ask a quick question? So, when do we fly back to L.A.? There was a beat of silence. ER's manager answered, blunt and clipped, when this is fixed. GZ's manager nodded. Until then, you're staying in Japan. How long that is? Entirely up to your two frontmen. Every head slowly turned toward Izuku and Katsuki. Katsuki looked like he might explode. Izuku stared down at the table. Izuku finally looked up. By doing what? A formal apology. Their manager folded their arms. By pretending you're lovers. The silence was instant. What? Izuku blinked. Katsuki shot up from his chair. No way. Gyro let out a strangled cough. You're kidding, right? Todoroki rubbed his temples. Tokoyami sighed like he had already accepted the situation. We're dead serious, GZ's manager said. A surprise collaboration. Romantic tension rebranding. Public reconciliation. You don't have to kiss, just act like you don't want to fight. This is insane. Izuku said, stunned. You want us to lie to our fans? ER's manager shrugged. Or don't. But if you won't salvage this, both your bands can say goodbye to your career. Katsuki stared, disbelief written all over him. So it's either fake dating or career suicide, the manager said coldly, pretend or fall. No one said anything. Ciro's jaw dropped. Kaminari whispered, okay, this is either genius, or the worst idea ever. Katsuki looked at Izuku, who was already looking back. For once, they didn't say anything. Just stared. Izuku's eyes flicked to his band. Gyro. Tokoyami. Todoroki. It hit him all at once, everything they've built. Every sleepless night in the studio, every live show, every backstage panic and shared dream. All of it, on the line. He took a breath. Deal. Katsuki blinked slowly. What? Izuku's voice was tight, but steady. I'm not gonna let Emerald Riot fall apart because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. It's my fault. So, yeah. Deal. There was a pause before the 3 Ground Zero boys sprang into action. Kirishima grabbed Katsuki's shoulders, his eyes wide with excitement. Bro, I know you care about us. Please, man, Ciro added earnestly, I don't want to go back to working at my cousin's shop. We'll never survive on our own, Kaminari chimed in. I mean, who's going to remind me to keep things in check? Katsuki glared at them all, then turned his gaze to Izuku. With a low and reluctant mutter, he said, fine. Kaminari immediately celebrated with a fist pump, while Ciro collapsed to the floor in relief. Kirishima hugged him, and Katsuki nearly reacted with annoyance. Todoroki sighed, shaking his head. This is the most ridiculous situation. Gyro whispered, we're in trouble. Tokoyami stared blankly, stating, our fates are sealed. And just like that, Emerald Riot Izuku Midoriya and Ground Zero Katsuki Bakugo, once bandmates and rivals, were now officially fake dating. Media training day. The tension in the room was palpable. Katsuki sat in a chair, his posture rigid, while Izuku faced him, arms crossed and foot tapping anxiously. Their manager clapped her hands once, her cheerfulness contrasting sharply with the atmosphere. Alright, lovebirds. First rule of fake dating, convince the world you don't hate each other. That's not true, Katsuki muttered, but she ignored him. We're doing chemistry drills. Chemistry drills. Izuku echoed, horrified. What are we, in drama club? Yes, she replied flatly. And you're both failing. On the couch, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Shiro were already enjoying popcorn. Give me eye contact, the manager instructed. Katsuki stared, not at Izuku but through him, as if imagining a different scenario entirely. Izuku squinted back. You look like you want to fight me. That's because I do. Okay, the manager interjected, clapping again. That's enough enemies to lovers energy for now. Let's try, hand-holding. Izuku flinched. What? Katsuki scoffed. Absolutely not. If you can't hold hands for 30 seconds, how are you going to pretend to be in love on live TV, she said sweetly, her tone leaving no room for argument. Izuku held out his hand hesitantly. Katsuki stared at it as if it were a challenge. Eventually, he grunted and took it. 30 seconds felt like an eternity as their hands rested together cold and stiff. Smile, she instructed. Both of them forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. I take it back, Shiro said, shielding his eyes. This might actually kill me. Oh my god, it's like watching taxidermy flirt, Kaminari added. Okay, the manager groaned, dragging a hand down her face. Let's do compliments. Izuku, you go first. Izuku blinked. What am I complimenting? Katsuki's face. Or personality. Or soul. Izuku turned to Katsuki and cleared his throat. Your hair is spiky. That's not a compliment, nerd, Katsuki growled. It was going to be, Izuku snapped. Let me finish. Continue, the manager said warily. Izuku squinted at him. Your hair is, aggressively styled. Like an explosion. Which is, very, you. Katsuki gave him an unimpressed look. Wow, Jiru deadpanned from the door. The romance. I'm weeping. Your turn, Katsuki, the manager said, pinching the bridge of her nose. Katsuki muttered something under his breath. What was that? He doesn't trip on stage as much anymore. Izuku looked offended. I never tripped on stage. Their manager slapped a clipboard down on the table. New drill. Body language mirroring. Go. What's that? Katsuki snapped. Copy each other's posture. Lean when they lean. Laugh when they laugh. Why? Izuku asked. It builds subconscious intimacy, she replied. Now do it. Reluctantly, they slouched into identical positions, arms crossed and matching scowls, reflecting their mutual discomfort. Okay, the manager said. Now fake laugh. Together. They both stared at her, bewildered. Now, she repeated. Izuku, ha. Katsuki, ha. Both, ha. Sweet lord, the manager muttered. It's like watching two androids discover feelings. Jiru raised her phone. This needs to be documented. Please don't, Izuku begged. Too late, she grinned. The cafe was quiet, romantic, and painfully awkward. It offered a rooftop view of Tokyo, private yet not private enough, with a few curious diners lingering nearby. Their manager sat 3 tables away, wearing sunglasses and pretending to read a newspaper. Katsuki slumped in his chair, clearly annoyed, while Izuku held the menu tightly. This is ridiculous, Katsuki muttered, not for the first time. You think I want to be here? Izuku whispered back. Their manager's voice carried softly but sternly from her corner. Laugh. Like he just said something cute. Izuku forced a robotic ha. Ha, then whispered, say something cute. What even counts as cute? I don't know. Tell me I have nice eyes. Katsuki blinked. Your eyes look like algae. Try again. Like ocean slime. Izuku gave him a deadpan look. Charming. Just pretend, Katsuki muttered. Across the terrace, someone gasped. Izuku froze. Did you hear that? Katsuki glanced sideways. A couple of teenage girls were pointing, phones slowly rising. Great, Katsuki said under his breath. The first photo snapped. Then another. Then 3. One fan whispered, that's them. That's really them. Another one squealed, they're on a date. Wait, are they officially dating? Oh my god, since when? I'm posting this now. Katsuki's hand clenched around his glass, and Izuku looked like he wanted to disappear. But their manager, sipping her tea behind her disguise, gave a discreet thumbs up. Now lean in, she called, still pretending not to know them. Like you're sharing a secret. Izuku inhaled sharply and leaned forward. Katsuki followed, stiff and muttering, you've got something on your face. Izuku blinked. Where? Dead center. You look like you made out with a donut, nerd. Face red, Izuku wiped at his mouth. A few fans across the cafe giggled. Their manager pulled out her phone, already trending. Good. She texted, okay. We might actually pull this off. They hadn't even had a real break before their next challenge, a live interview in 15 minutes. Meanwhile, the world was buzzing. Photos from the rooftop date were circulating, blurry but clear enough, hands brushing, leaning close, Katsuki looking at Izuku with intense focus. They were trending. Y'all. I zoomed in. That's the look of love. Nation, we won. Even the cafe joined the chaos, posting a picture on their official account, captioned, a moment between two hearts. Hot beverage, orange heart, green heart. Izuku sighed and locked his phone. This is getting out of hand. Tell me about it, Jiru said, pulling her hood low. My cousin just texted me, is it true, in all caps. Katsuki scoffed from across the room. I really dislike this. Kaminari turned in his seat, grinning. Honestly. I think it's hilarious. They're unhinged. Everyone already forgot the disaster podcast from 2 days ago. Oh, please don't remind us about that mess, Jiru groaned. Zero added with a shrug, but man, you guys did look like you were about to kiss. Katsuki's eyes flared. Izuku nearly choked. What? Tokoyami cut in, calm as ever. The masses have declared it canon. We are simply background characters in their delusion. Todoroki, still scrolling on his phone, added, someone made a PowerPoint about your eye contact arc. It's 20 slides. Izuku buried his face in both hands. God help me. Kirishima leaned forward. You guys are already doing great. This is just noise. Loud, aggressive, unavoidable noise, Zero echoed. Izuku nodded, barely. The green room buzzed. Staff ran around with mics, hairspray, and coffee. Ground Zero and Emerald Riot sat on opposite couches, separated by caffeine and tension. Their manager stepped in, voice clipped. All right. You're on in 15. You know the drill. They're going to ask about the rooftop. Smile. Stay calm. If you panic, fake a nosebleed. Kaminari suggested. Pass out dramatically. Zero added. The manager didn't dignify that with a response. Don't contradict each other. Stick to the timeline. Pretend you've been testing the waters. It's still new. Katsuki scowled. So basically lie. It's called acting, and saving your careers. Jairu clapped her hands once. Okay, let's rehearse the fake couple energy. Izuku, try looking at him like you don't want to shove a mic down his throat. Izuku groaned. You're not helping, Jairu. Kirishima nudged Katsuki. Come on. You survived Kaminari's cooking. You got this. Barely, Katsuki muttered. Tokoyami placed a hand over his chest. I wish you both the strength of 1,000 lies. Todoroki sipped his water. And the emotional detachment of a tax accountant. Izuku laughed, briefly. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then Katsuki muttered, try not to stutter this time, nerd. Try not to glare like you're being held hostage, Kaken, Izuku shot back. Guys, Jairu warned. Focus. A knock came at the door. 5-minute call. Zero leaned in with a smirk. Well. Hope you're ready for your debut. Katsuki and Izuku looked at each other a glance, a breath, years of everything unsaid and nothing was spoken. Well. It's now or never. The script had worked. The public seemed convinced that the blow-up 2 days ago was just the result of confused feelings finally surfacing a messy, emotional turning point. Now, the story was that they'd reconciled, were testing the waters, and slowly figuring things out. From heartbreak to healing. From tension to romance. All wrapped up in a perfect PR bow. The rest of Emerald Riot and Ground Zero crowded into the green room, buzzing with energy. Jairu expressed his admiration, eyes wide, saying they had killed it. Tokoyami added that it was the performance of the year. Kirishima clapped Katsuki on the back, commenting on the intensity of his gaze. Katsuki, however, muttered that he was just saving their backs. Zero gave Izuku a thumbs up, noting that he even smiled like he meant it. Izuku didn't respond, he was staring at the floor, feeling the weight of the moment. The laughter and chatter around him blurred as he recalled a photo from the interview that was already circulating on social media, showing them sitting close, sharing a soft look, as if they were really in love. It felt wrong, especially since Katsuki wasn't even looking at him now. Jairu nudged him gently, prompting him to blink and force a smile. Kaminari raised his phone like a toast, suggesting they celebrate surviving the most awkward interview ever. Zero seconded the idea, calling for drinks. Kirishima chimed in, saying he'd go if there was karaoke, while Todoroki calmly stated he would supervise, allowing only 1 drink each. Izuku quietly agreed, not because he wanted to celebrate, but because he needed to forget how easy it was to pretend with Katsuki. Tokoyami then tilted his head and asked if this meant they could go back to L, now. The room fell silent, and both managers, who had been whispering near the doorway, froze. Suddenly, one of them exclaimed in shock, revealing that the awards committee wanted a special stage. Kaminari was confused, asking who wanted what. The manager explained that they wanted Emerald Riot and Ground Zero to perform back-to-back. Jairu was taken aback, while Zero grinned, recognizing the significance. The manager continued, pacing the room, stating they wanted an original piece written by Izuku and Katsuki. Everyone turned to look at them, and both of them paled. Izuku repeated in disbelief that they wanted a duet, while Katsuki firmly rejected the idea. The manager informed them it was already being announced, and soon everyone's phones pinged with the news, Emerald Riot x Ground Zero to perform a joint showcase featuring a duet by Midoriya Izuku and Bakugo Katsuki. Katsuki growled in frustration, threatening to set something on fire if he heard anyone mention their pairing again. Izuku blinked at the headline, asking when this was happening. The manager replied it was next month, exactly 24 days from then. Kaminari smirked, teasing that Katsuki would be writing a love song. Katsuki shot him a glare, warning him not to try it. Todoroki calmly stated that they couldn't go back to L.A. until it was done, prompting Izuku to exhale and realize they would be staying in Japan. Tokoyami reclined with a nod, commenting on the upcoming deception, late-night rehearsals, and unresolved feelings. Jiraiya deadpanned, calling it glorious, while Kirishima beamed, excited about the prospect of fake dating his ex-bandmate in front of millions. Izuku muttered that he thought he needed more than one drink that night. They ended up in a tucked-away bar somewhere in Shibuya. Dim lights, plush seats, no fans, no cameras, just them. Izuku sat at the end of the booth, barely touching his drink. Around him, the others talked over one another, excited, chaotic, as if the impossible wasn't hanging in the air. Back-to-back shows, Shiro said, half laughing. Main stage, then the encore. Then press. And don't forget the photo shoots, Jiraiya added, rolling her eyes. One for each band, then one together. Cute. They already booked the interviews, Todoroki added dryly, sipping a drink that was way too pink for how serious he looked. Excellent, murmured Takoyami, arms crossed. Rehearsals are gonna be tough, Kirishima said. We've only got a few weeks, and that duet needs to hit. Katsuki leaned back in his chair, scowling at the ceiling. This is so ridiculous. Izuku didn't say a word. He just stared at his drink, listening. Somewhere between Joint Showcase and BKDK Nation Explodes, his brain had short-circuited. They wanted him to write a love song. With Bakugo Katsuki. Of all people. His childhood friend. His ex-bandmate. His rival. Not someone he'd ever dated, but somehow still the one person he couldn't think straight around. They had never been a love story. But now the world wanted a song like they were. This was a disaster. I still think you two should just make it appealing, Kaminari said, smirking. Give the fans what they want. Say one more word and I'm throwing you through the window, idiot, Katsuki hissed. They were so in over their heads. Shiro snorted. I mean, the tension's already there. Might as well use it. Izuku scoffed, eyes still locked on his untouched glass. He finally spoke, voice low, this is a bad idea. Katsuki muttered, sharp. No kidding. The duet or the pretending part? Takoyami asked. Izuku just groaned, burying his face in his hands. How did it escalate to this? They were supposed to be over. Done. Different bands. Different lives. I need another drink, Izuku mumbled. Make it 5, Katsuki muttered, already downing his. Jiraiya nudged Izuku with her elbow. Think you can survive 3 weeks of this? He looked down at his glass. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Chapter 9, Brainstorm Session Number 1. Emerald Riot had just finished tearing through half their setlist for the upcoming show. The reverb still hummed in the walls, sweat clung to their skin, and the air buzzed not from the distortion or Jiraiya's bassline, but from something more pointed. Their frontman hadn't spoken since the last chorus. Jiraiya unplugged her amp with a snap. You good? Izuku blinked like he'd just remembered where he was. No. Todoroki, sitting cross-legged by the amp rack, raised an eyebrow. Did you start writing? Izuku blinked again. The duet. The reason for the tightness in his chest all morning. Oh. No. I haven't. Jiraiya narrowed her eyes. Dude, it's a duet. Why are you trying to write it by yourself? Izuku flushed. I don't know, I just thought I should get a draft going or something, alone. Takoyami asked, crossing his arms. You cannot write a duet when only one voice is heard. Izuku groaned into his hands. I don't know what I'm doing. Todoroki blinked. That's new. I mean with him. Izuku snapped, then winced. The duet. The pretending. The fans. All of it. I don't know how to deal with any of it. Silence. Then Jiraiya grinned. So you are spiraling. Izuku huffed. Every time I try, it's either too emotional or too angry or, Gyro elbowed him gently. You don't have to know yet. Just write what you feel. Even if it's messy. You've done this before, Izuku, she added, voice soft but firm. You and Katsuki always wrote together. Back then. Denotation heart. You made it work. Izuku sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. I know, but that was years ago. College days. And this isn't the same. They want a love song, we were never even a thing. I don't know what to write. So. Write messy. Write scared. Just write. The rest will follow, Gyro said. I guess, Izuku muttered. He still wasn't convinced. But it doesn't feel like I have anything to say. Then make something up, Todoroki shrugged, his eyes lingering a little too long. Or write about something you want to feel. Or someone who makes you feel more than you're ready to admit. Izuku blinked, caught off guard. Right. Takoyami stood, guitar still slung behind him like a blade. I must commune with the void before sunset. The air feels uneasy. They all watched him leave without a word. Anyway, Gyro said, shaking off the weirdness, take the day. Go somewhere. Reset your brain. Walk. Nap. Scream into a mic, whatever. Izuku glanced down at his phone, the screen lighting up with the name that had been circling his thoughts like a storm all morning. Katsuki Bakugo. No messages. Their managers had traded numbers for them because, of course, the two of them couldn't be bothered. They hadn't even talked to each other when it happened. Since the announcement, nothing. No check-in. No comments. Just silence. And now they were supposed to write a song together. A love song. Izuku sighed and stood, yeah. Maybe I will. Izuku ended up at a quiet cafe with warm lighting, jazz playing low in the background. He just wanted to clear his head, maybe draft some lyrics without anyone breathing down his neck. He spotted Katsuki the moment he turned from the counter. Also in disguise, hoodie pulled low, face half hidden behind a cap. Sitting alone in the corner with a notebook open. Pages empty. Pen tapping furiously. Clearly annoyed. Izuku froze. They locked eyes for just a second, long enough. Katsuki cursed under his breath and looked away first. Izuku sighed and sat 2 tables over. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Minutes passed. It was awkward. It was tense. Katsuki stood up abruptly, shoving the chair back with a scrape that echoed through the cafe, and walked out with his notebook still empty. Izuku didn't move. Didn't breathe. Yeah. This won't work. And then he dropped his head onto the table with a thud so loud half the cafe turned to look. He didn't even lift it. I hate everything, he mumbled into the wood. The next few days blurred into sleepless nights, cold reheated coffee, and crumpled lyric sheets. Nothing seemed to stick, nothing sounded right. Every draft either spiraled into an angry rant or became so embarrassingly honest that he couldn't even look at the words. He felt like he was spiraling. His phone buzzed sometime in the afternoon, but he ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. By the 5th time, he finally caved. Izuku wondered who it could be. It was Kirishima, who had snagged his number from Bakugo without him knowing. Kirishima asked if he was doing okay, to which Izuku replied, absolutely not. Kirishima laughed and mentioned that Bakugo had been extra cranky lately, not writing a single word either. Izuku sat up straight, surprised to hear that. Kirishima explained that they had asked Bakugo about the duet, and he had reacted strongly, leading them to figure out that they needed to intervene. Izuku sighed and leaned back, contemplating the situation. Kirishima suggested that Izuku come over to their studio and bring his band, emphasizing that it would be a chill environment and that he missed them, especially Gyro. After a moment of thought, Izuku considered the idea. It wasn't like he could text Katsuki directly and suggest they write a fake love song together without feeling awkward. This way, it could be framed as work, surrounded by friends on neutral ground. At least he wouldn't have to ask Katsuki directly. The studio door slammed open, and Katsuki's voice echoed before they even stepped in. He demanded to know why there were enemies in his studio. Izuku winced at the word enemies, while Jairu gave him a dry look, commenting on the great start. Todoroki calmly stepped inside, followed by Takoyami, who muttered something about enduring flames for the sake of art. Izuku exhaled and braced himself before walking in. Ground Zero was already mid-argument, Katsuki waving a marked-up notebook while Denki and Shiro ducked for cover. Kirishima raised both arms like a referee, calling for a temporary truce for the duet. Katsuki narrowed his eyes at him and then at Izuku, who folded his arms and admitted he didn't want to come either. The session began, though it quickly derailed. On one side of the studio, the others were deep into an intense Uno match, their laughter rising with each draw. Meanwhile, Katsuki and Izuku sat in silence, a whiteboard behind them reading, BKDK, love song. Brainstorm session #, no one dared erase the question mark. Izuku scribbled something, but Katsuki scratched it out as soon as he leaned back. Frustrated, Izuku pointed out Katsuki's lack of personal growth. Katsuki slammed his notebook shut, declaring Izuku impossible. Their friends intervened, suggesting a timeout and a challenge to encourage emotional vulnerability. Kaminari proposed a compliment challenge, insisting they sit face to face until they said something nice to each other. Reluctantly, Katsuki and Izuku obeyed, grumbling about the situation. Izuku sighed, trying to remember why he was there. Oh right, for the duet. He didn't want to say anything too honest, but lying felt worse. He thought back to when they were kids, how Katsuki had always burned bright, his eyes alive with ambition. Opening his eyes, Izuku shifted in his seat and began to speak. He complimented Katsuki on his intensity and drive, acknowledging how impressive he had always found him. Katsuki froze, taken aback. Izuku quickly looked away, embarrassed, thinking he had said something foolish. Kaminari prompted Katsuki for his turn, who looked visibly uncomfortable. After a moment, Katsuki begrudgingly admitted that Izuku wasn't completely useless and even had a brain sometimes. The room fell silent, surprised by his words. Jairu and Denki reacted with disbelief, while Kirishima gave a thumbs up, acknowledging the unexpected compliment. Izuku felt a warmth in his chest, sensing a shift in the air. It wasn't complete peace, but perhaps it was the start of something new. A week later, their managers informed them about a collaborative shoot for S Magazine's summer special. The day arrived, and the set was buzzing with activity, cameras clicking, stylists shouting final touches, and stagehands rushing about. Ground Zero was first, their sharp silhouettes and black-on-black layering creating a striking presence. Katsuki didn't smile, his glare and fierce stance were enough to convey the aesthetic, matched by Kirishima's fiery energy. Shiro and Kaminari flanked them effortlessly, embodying a band that didn't need to try. They looked ready to take on the world. Then came Izuku, dressed in earthy moss greens, with delicate metal rings adorning his fingers. Katsuki shouldn't have been looking, but he was. Izuku's damp curls caught the light, his eyes glowing with intensity, focused yet quietly dangerous. There was no smile, just that look. Katsuki's mind went blank for a moment, overwhelmed by the unexpected feelings. Kirishima, noticing Katsuki's intense gaze, raised an eyebrow. As Izuku adjusted his look with a stylist, he caught Katsuki's eye, and it felt electric. Katsuki quickly looked away, flustered. Kirishima exchanged glances with Shiro, who was trying to suppress a grin. "Bro," Shiro whispered, clearly amused. "DMN," Kirishima replied, still watching the two of them. The solo shoots wrapped up, and group shots followed in a blur of flashes and instructions. Then the assistant clapped her hands, calling for Katsuki and Izuku to prepare for their pair shot. "What do you mean, pair?" Katsuki exclaimed, his voice louder than he intended. The studio fell silent, and even the fog machine quieted. Jairu cringed behind her makeup chair, and someone dropped a brush. They were fake dating, and the assistant continued, unfazed, explaining that S Magazine wanted a featured spread for their duet promo. Katsuki's jaw tightened, clearly frustrated. Across the room, Izuku sighed deeply, running a hand down his face as if this was a familiar scenario. He forced a smile and reassured Katsuki, "It's for the promo, Kaken." Katsuki didn't respond, too distracted by how good Izuku looked today. They were ushered to the set, where the lighting dimmed to a warm amber hue, and a new backdrop was wheeled out. The photographer clapped, eager to capture the intensity of their dynamic. The first few shots were simple back-to-back poses, side glances, and almost touching arms. The atmosphere was quiet except for the soft sounds of the studio. The photographer then suggested they try something softer, prompting Izuku to lean back against Katsuki, who stood behind him, tense and rigid. "Touch him," the photographer encouraged, and Katsuki reluctantly placed his hands just above Izuku's hips. Izuku leaned back slightly, feeling the warmth radiating from Katsuki. "Closer." "Chin near his shoulder," the photographer directed. Katsuki's breath caught as he complied, his jaw brushing against Izuku's temple. Their bandmates watched, barely containing their excitement. "Good," the photographer said, capturing the moment. "Now face each other. Midoriya, sit between his legs." Izuku carefully positioned himself, feeling Katsuki's fingers resting lightly on his knee. The photographer called for one last shot, instructing them to close the distance. They moved closer, their boots nearly touching, the air between them charged. Katsuki could feel the tension, the way Izuku's breath hitched when he shifted. He found himself staring at Izuku's lips, caught in a moment of vulnerability. The photographer urged them to get even closer, and Katsuki remained still while Izuku took a step forward. Their faces just inches apart. Katsuki couldn't help but notice the details: the gold flecks in Izuku's eyes, the freckles on his nose, and the way his lips parted slightly. Izuku, on the other hand, was struggling to maintain his composure, feeling the heat of Katsuki's gaze. The photographer noticed their flushed faces and paused, asking if it was hot in the studio. "Yes," Izuku replied quickly, his heart racing. They cranked up the air conditioning, but it didn't help. The tension between them was palpable, their heartbeats loud in their ears. Neither of them dared to move. When the final shutter clicked, the silence that followed was overwhelming. They stepped back quickly, as if jolted by electricity, avoiding each other's gaze, their faces flushed. They were breathing hard, not from exertion, but from the intensity of the moment. And Jairu. She had captured the entire experience in stunning detail. After the shoot wrapped, the crew clapped, expressed their gratitude, and called it a day. Everyone buzzed with leftover energy, laughing, chatting, grabbing water bottles and jackets. But Izuku and Katsuki didn't even look at each other. Not once. Not when they stepped off the set. Not when they bowed their heads politely to the staff. Not even when Kaminari yelled, "That was the most intense silence I've ever witnessed." They walked off in opposite directions, as if pulled apart by unseen forces. That night, Katsuki lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, searching for answers. Sleep wouldn't come. His mind was stuck on the impossible closeness they had shared, the way Izuku's breath had brushed against him, how his freckles looked like stars, and that blush that bloomed on his cheeks when their eyes locked. He groaned into his pillow, muttering, "What a nerd." It didn't help. So he sat up, raked a hand through his hair, and gave up trying. He crossed the room, grabbed his notebook from the desk, and flipped to a blank page, feeling the rhythm of something burning in his chest. And he started to write. The morning after the shoot, everything exploded. #BKDK was trending #1 worldwide. A tweet featuring one of their close-up shots, Izuku leaning on Katsuki's shoulder, fingers laced, almost nose-to-nose, went viral. "They're so in love. Hottest couple of the year." Fans flooded social media with fancams, edits, and fan art. Jiraiya texted them a screenshot of a tweet that read, "Katsuki Bakugo looking at Izuku Midoriya like he invented music." Izuku screamed into a pillow while Katsuki tossed his phone into his laundry basket. At 10:47 a.m., they had an emergency meeting with their manager, who was sipping coffee like he hadn't slept in ages. "So," he said slowly, "you two are officially the biggest sensation since sliced bread." Katsuki blinked, scowling. "What does that even mean?" Izuku looked confused and tired. "You're trending higher than international scandals," the manager continued. "We want to keep this going. Ride the wave. Keep the momentum." Alarm flashed in Izuku's eyes. "Wait, what now?" The manager explained that they would need to create more social media content, a follow-up magazine spread, and a live Q&A. Katsuki's glare could have shattered glass. Izuku looked like he might faint. The manager took another sip of coffee. "PR gold, boys. You're practically a brand now." Izuku buried his face in his hands, his ears burning. "Do we have a choice?" "Not if you want your album sales to keep breaking records," the manager replied. Katsuki growled, "I'll break your face." The manager didn't flinch. "Make it look passionate. The fans love that angry in love vibe." From the back of the room, Jiraiya spoke through a mouthful of chips, honestly. "He's got a point." Kirishima lit up with excitement. "Guys, this could be fun. You could totally lean into it. Like, post a couple's day in the life thing. Hold hands on stage. Do a casual live stream, maybe feed each other or, I will throw you through this table," Katsuki barked, pointing at him without looking. Izuku sat curled in the farthest corner of the couch, hands covering most of his face, eyes wide behind his fingers. "If we do this," he said, voice muffled, "it's just for promo." "Right." The manager smiled, wide and pleased. "Absolutely. Unless, of course, something changes." That statement silenced everyone. Katsuki glared at the wall, his leg bouncing like a ticking bomb. Izuku stared down at his lap, fingers twisting into his sleeves, face unreadable except for the flush creeping up his ears. Somewhere behind them, Kaminari let out a slow whistle. "Yup. You're both in trouble." No one disagreed. On the day of the live Q&A, they were seated on a couch way too close, their knees bumping every time they shifted. The live chat was wild. "Are you dating for real? Katsuki blinked twice if you're in love. What's your favorite thing about each other?" The host grinned. "Let's do that one. What do you admire most about each other?" Izuku went first, clearly prepped. He fiddled with the mic wire. "Kakens, intense," he started carefully. "But in a good way. He's passionate. Focused. He doesn't do anything halfway. That kind of honesty it's hard to find." He swallowed hard. "That's what I admire most about him. But honestly." He could go on forever about how Katsuki never asks for praise but earns it anyway, how he always knows exactly what to do in a crisis, and how he stays up late making sure things are perfect. But he simply said, "That's what I admire most about him." Because anything more would have been too much, too close to the truth. The host nodded. "That's very thoughtful." Izuku smiled, then glanced down. Then it was Katsuki's turn. The chat exploded, "OMG, say something. Bakugo. EXE has stopped. This is live," I'm screaming. His ears were red, fingers twitching on the table. He didn't look at Izuku. Then, barely audible, he said, his voice. The host blinked. "Sorry. Could you repeat?" Katsuki, louder but flustered, said, "I said his voice. I've always liked his voice." Izuku froze, mouth parted, eyes wide, heart racing. "It's stupid, okay. But he talks with so much emotion. Even when he's mumbling nonsense or rambling. It's just, calming. Or something. Izuku blinked, as if trying to process what he had just heard, a blush creeping up his cheeks. The fans watching were ecstatic. The host giggled. Well, that was unexpectedly heartfelt. Next question, Katsuki snapped, reaching for a water bottle as if he needed it to survive. Off camera, Takoyami whispered to Zero, they're so done for. Zero grinned. Bet you 20 they're real by the end of this. The green room felt colder after the lights of the live stream went out. Izuku slumped onto the couch, gripping a water bottle tightly. His fingers trembled slightly, and he tried to shake off the feeling. Jairu tossed her mic pack onto the table and flopped down beside him, watching him quietly. You good? She finally asked, cracking open a soda. Izuku forced a laugh. Yeah. Just, didn't expect him to say that. He groaned and let his head drop back onto the couch. I know he was just panicking. It was improv. He probably didn't mean anything by it. Jairu raised an eyebrow. He said he likes your voice, Izuku. He waved her off. Because I mumble too much. He was trying to be funny. Kaken doesn't say things like that. Not really. Jairu stared at him. Right. Totally normal. Super platonic fake dating behavior. Completely professional. It is, Izuku said quickly, sitting up straighter. We're just good at working together, that's all. We've known each other since we were kids, we know how to sell it. Jairu snorted and stood up. Sure. Keep telling yourself that. Izuku blinked after her as she walked off. He looked down at the water bottle still clutched in his hands, his thumb worrying the label. It is just promo, he mumbled, though his chest felt tight, and he couldn't stop hearing Katsuki's voice. Everything was moving too fast. The rehearsal room buzzed with energy, half-finished lyrics taped to whiteboards, unfinished riffs looping, and tired people clinging to caffeine and nerves. Guitars hummed like background static, and someone's phone kept buzzing against an amp. Izuku sat curled in the corner of the couch, notebook in his lap, pen unmoving. They were in trouble. 1.5 weeks left before the biggest performance of their lives, and it felt like they were barely holding things together. The second verse wasn't finalized until last night, and the bridge still needed work. They hadn't rehearsed full transitions, and their timing was a mess. And Izuku was the biggest mess of all. Lately, he couldn't stop watching Katsuki. It all started after the Q&A, after that public moment where he said Katsuki was honest, and Katsuki said he liked Izuku's voice not just as a singer, but in a way that felt too raw. Then they chose a title. It happened quickly, amidst the usual chaos, when no one expected something serious from Katsuki. Okay, Kaminari said, half upside down in a beanbag, what do we call this sad, Sisi, emotionally repressed anthem? Jairu, without missing a beat, said, don't be a coward. A pencil flew at her head, but Izuku barely noticed. He was drawing stars on a corner of his lyric sheet, mind full of static. Then Katsuki spoke, his voice low, do I wanna know? Everything went silent. Kirishima dropped a drumstick. Jairu froze mid-tune, fingers stiff on her guitar. Todoroki glanced up from the keyboard, brows raised. Even Kaminari paused, as if the words had knocked the air out of him. Izuku looked up slowly, his heart racing. Why yeah, he said too quickly. That, sounds good. Katsuki didn't flinch, just kept scribbling over his chord sheet as if he hadn't just changed everything. Do I wanna know? He said it like it was obvious, like it wasn't the most dangerous question either of them could ask. Izuku gulped, feeling his stomach twist. Because it fit too well the lyrics, the tension. If this was fake, why did it also fit the confusion he had been burying in every half-written line and every stolen glance? He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. He couldn't afford to spiral, they had too much to do. But still, the question clung to him like a second skin. That night, after finalizing the lyrics, he fell asleep on the studio couch, pen in hand, notebook open on his chest. He woke up in the dark, half drenched in cold sweat. Everyone else had gone. When Izuku looked at the clock, it was 3:07 a.m. The lights were still on, and the lyrics were finished, written in Katsuki's messy handwriting right below where Izuku left off. Katsuki was still there, fast asleep beside him, arms folded on the table, face buried in the crook of his elbow. He looked peaceful, the kind of peace Izuku rarely saw on him. The studio's dim light softened the sharp angles of his face, casting a warm glow over the quiet curve of his cheek and the mess of blonde hair that had fallen into his eyes. Izuku hesitated, unsure if he should reach out. He didn't. He just watched for a moment longer, feeling something tender and terrifying in his chest. Then he read the lyrics. Every word felt like Katsuki had taken something from inside Izuku's chest and put it on paper. Feelings Izuku hadn't even named. He read it once, twice, and on the third time, he nearly tore the page out. It felt like a confession. The next morning, Shiro had said something when they showed the band the lyrics. DMN. Are you sure this is still fake dating? Because it's giving major yearning, Jairu added quietly, watching them. Izuku hadn't answered. Neither had Katsuki. Now, a few days later, the studio was buzzing with energy. The clock was ticking. Izuku's fingers trembled as he gripped the microphone. They were finally going to sing together face to face, live, just like the show. Across the room, Katsuki was adjusting his mic, his sleeves rolled up and his expression unreadable. He appeared calm, but Izuku knew him well enough to sense the tension in his movements. Guys, are you sure you don't want to try a slower tempo? Kirishima asked, his brows furrowed. You know, give it that raw, emotional feel like yearning in slow motion. No, Izuku replied without hesitation. Shut up, Katsuki added flatly. All right. Kirishima laughed, raising his hands in surrender. From the top, Todoroki said coolly, already adjusting his bass strap. Let's run it. The track started with a low, gritty guitar riff that slinked through the amp. Izuku stepped back from the mic. This wasn't his part. Katsuki leaned in, his voice low and rough, filled with raw emotion. Then it was Izuku's turn. He opened his mouth, and the first note almost caught in his throat. But he sang, because the words were his, too. When they hit the chorus, Izuku glanced up, his heart racing. Crawling back to you. Ever thought of calling when you've had a few? 'Cause I always do. Katsuki was looking at him, his gaze steady and serious, as if the words had come from a deep place neither of them wanted to acknowledge. They both looked away quickly, the next lyrics hanging heavily in the air. Maybe I'm too busy being yours to fall for somebody new. Izuku's throat felt dry, his grip on the mic tightening. When the final chords faded into silence, the studio held its breath. Nobody moved or spoke, the silence felt louder than the song. Izuku stared at the floor, his pulse racing. He didn't know what they were doing anymore, but it felt too real. Their bandmates exchanged glances, avoiding the tension that hung between them. Kaminari finally broke the silence, leaning back in his chair. Okay, but seriously, are we still pretending this is fake? For once, Jairu didn't hit him. Katsuki scoffed, wiping sweat from his brow casually. Yeah, it is, dumbass. They wanted a love song, didn't they? There you go. Well, it doesn't exactly come off as a love song, Jairu pointed out. Not with that beat. Yeah, Shiro nodded. If we want people to really feel the emotion, maybe we should slow it down. No. Katsuki shut him down. It works the way it is. Besides, it's all fake anyway. Just a PR stunt. He's right, Izuku added quickly, avoiding everyone's eyes. A quiet moment passed. No one believed it, but no one pushed. Izuku exhaled, folding the lyric sheet and tucking it into his notebook. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. We still have to rehearse ER's set. Let's not burn out now. The rest of the room nodded, slowly getting to their feet, the tension still thick in the air. Without another word, Izuku grabbed his things and headed toward the door of Ground Zero's studio. Katsuki's gaze lingered, but Izuku didn't look back. Later that evening, Emerald Riot was halfway through rehearsal, the energy completely different, faster, more electric, less emotional, but Izuku still couldn't shake the weight in his chest. The duet was still crawling under his skin. Katsuki's voice, that stare, the lyrics, they wouldn't leave him alone. Jiru noticed. As they tuned up for their last run-through, she leaned over with a lazy strum of her guitar and asked, "So, still fake, you think?" Izuku stiffened. "I just need air." "Aha. Break time," he muttered, tossing on his hoodie and slipping out the studio's back door with a cap and mask on. He didn't care if it was a little obvious, it was the best he could do for a disguise. The night air hit him instantly. Cool. Sharp. Grounding. He let his shoulders drop and finally breathed. "Then, you too." Izuku blinked, turning to the side. Todoroki was already standing just a few feet away, arms folded. When did he even get out? The street was mostly empty, washed in yellow light from old lampposts. The city hummed quietly around them, distant traffic, the buzz of neon signs, the occasional bark of a dog, but Izuku and Todoroki just walked. It was quiet. But Izuku didn't mind. Silence with Todoroki had always been comfortable. Todoroki sipped from his coffee again and said, casually, "So, how are you?" Izuku blinked, then chuckled under his breath. Loaded question. That's what I was going for. Izuku kicked a stray pebble along the sidewalk. I don't know. Everything's moving so fast. The promo, the duet, rehearsals. Kaken. Todoroki tilted his head a little. Izuku let out a breath, hand going to the back of his neck. I just don't understand any of it. We wrote those lyrics, but it feels like, his voice trailed off, searching. Like they weren't made up. Like we weren't pretending. Like we were just saying what we really meant, without meaning to. Or it's just me. Todoroki didn't say anything, just let him talk. That was one of the things Izuku liked most about him. Izuku went on, voice softer now. And when we sing together, everything feels too raw. Too real. I keep telling myself it's for promo, it's fake, but, he paused, thumb fiddling with the edge of his hoodie sleeve. Still, Todoroki didn't speak. Izuku glanced sideways. Sorry. I know that's probably weird to dump on you. I don't know who else to talk to. They stopped at a quiet corner. A cat darted across the road. Todoroki looked up at the sky for a second before his voice broke through the night. It's fine, he said quietly. I get it. Izuku blinked. You get it. Todoroki nodded once, slow. Yeah. That thing where you're not sure what you're feeling. So you keep telling yourself it's nothing. That it's just confusion or pressure or the moment. He finally looked at Izuku. But then it keeps showing up, and eventually, you're not really denying it anymore, you're just scared of what it could mean if it's real. Izuku's breath caught. The wind had picked up, gentle against his hoodie, but suddenly everything felt still. Izuku, Todoroki hesitated. Then, voice low, he said, Can I say something? Izuku turned to him, cautious. Yeah. Todoroki held his gaze. Calm. Certain. I liked you. Izuku blinked. Ha. I liked you, Todoroki repeated, calm as ever. For a long time. Since LA. Since you smiled at me and told me I should join the band. Izuku's mouth opened. Then closed. Then opened again. Shoto, you probably don't remember, he added, almost like a shrug. But you looked at me like I mattered. Like I belonged. That stayed with me. I'm sorry. Izuku's chest tightened, the words catching in his throat. I didn't know. And now, suddenly, things clicked into place. The teasing from Jiraiya. Tokoyami's knowing glances. It wasn't just nothing. It never was. I figured, and it's okay, Todoroki said, still watching the sky like it was easier than looking at him. I knew you liked him even then. Even if you didn't. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick. Weighted. It pressed against Izuku's ribs. He swallowed hard. Him. Todoroki didn't look at him. He didn't have to. Yeah. Bakugo. His voice was steady, maybe a little too steady. You've always had this pull. Like gravity's always dragging you back to him. Izuku's breath hitched, just a little. He didn't deny it. Even then, I don't regret liking you. Todoroki finally turned to him and offered a soft smile. I just hope you figure out what's real, and don't run from it. And Izuku didn't have anything to say. Next morning came like a car crash. Izuku had barely gotten 3 hours of sleep if that. His head was buried under a pillow, still half lost in a haze of aching limbs and emotional exhaustion, when, Izuku, wake up. Jiraiya's voice tore through the room like a siren. The door was flung open so hard it rebounded off the wall. Izuku groaned. Not moving. I'm serious, she shouted again, marching over and ripping the pillow from his face. You need to get up. Now. What Jiraiya? Izuku's voice was hoarse, confused, barely functioning. What time is it? Doesn't matter, she snapped. Izuku blinked, still not registering. Tadadaku is trending, Jiraiya deadpanned, shoving her phone in his face. He squinted at the screen. His own face. Shoto beside him. A soft streetlight above them, casting a warm glow. They did look close. NTMT, even. Hashtag Deku hashtag Izuku cheating. Hashtag love triangle hashtag crawling back to drama, what the, Izuku sat up fully, now wide awake, pulse spiking. What? Cheating. Exactly, Jiraiya said, crossing her arms. But logic doesn't matter to the internet. They already made up the story. You and Katsuki are apparently, secretly together, and you broke his heart by sneaking around with Todoroki. Izuku felt a wave of panic wash over him. He hadn't even processed half the chaos when his phone started ringing. Again. And again. Their manager's name flashing across the screen like a warning siren. Then Jiraiya's phone rang. And that's when Tokoyami burst in, still wearing pajama pants and a hoodie. The manager's already calling everyone. They're doing damage control. Damage control. Izuku croaked, now standing with wild bed hair and panic in his eyes. Behind Tokoyami, Todoroki appeared in the hallway, hair a mess, still majestic, blinking sleep from his eyes. What now? He asked, voice flat. Unfortunately we're doomed, Tokoyami said without missing a beat. Again. Izuku looked between them all, heart pounding in his throat. The photos. The hashtags. The accusations. For days before their biggest event. I swear we just went for a walk. Oh, I know, Jiraiya said, throwing him a shirt. But do the fans. Do the sponsors. You better fix this fast before Katsuki sees it. Izuku froze. Because Katsuki had definitely seen it. There's a full-blown media spiral, ER's manager snapped, pacing the floor of the shared studio. Your names are trending for all the wrong reasons. Todoroki. Midoriya. Alone. At 11 p.m. Tell me you didn't kiss in public. We didn't, Todoroki said flatly, still in his hoodie, unbothered. That doesn't matter now. GZ's manager threw the tablet on the table. Headlines were already up, secret lovers. Deku caught in late-night rendezvous, and love triangle or PR stunt. Emerald Riot sat on one couch, Ground Zero on the other. It felt like a tense meeting. Ground Zero's sponsors are furious. Emerald Riot's endorsements are already asking questions, she continued. We have to fix this. But Katsuki hadn't looked at Izuku once. Not since they got there. Not when the manager barked out demands. Not even when Izuku tried to explain. Kirishima had nudged him gently earlier, voice low. Hey, man. You good? Katsuki walked right past him and out the door. Izuku sat frozen on the edge of the couch, fists curled. His throat was dry. He didn't know what to do. The silence was worse than shouting. Because he knew this version of Katsuki. Quiet. Focused. Ice under pressure. And that kind of quiet. It was dangerous. So, I guess no rehearsal today? Kaminari asked, attempting to lighten the mood. No, Jiraiya cut in sharply. We still have to rehearse. We're 3 days away from the show. Problem is, Cyril muttered, arms crossed, Bakugo hasn't spoken. Not once. Since this morning. And that, my friend, Kirishima said with a heavy exhale, is a nuclear countdown waiting to happen. Both bands stood inside the entrance of the shared studio building, behind glass doors, frozen. No one said a word. Outside, the street was chaos. Reporters. Fans. Cameras. Placards. Screaming. Izuku, did you cheat on Katsuki? Is it true you used Katsuki or Todoroki's feelings for PR? Is this all a setup? Do you even love him? Izuku's hands trembled. Jiraiya groaned into her hands. Oh Christ, help us. Todoroki stood unmoving beside her, expression unreadable. Kirishima muttered, where's security? And then a voice cut through the mess. Not a fan. Not a reporter. A rival band member. Loud. Petty. Maybe he just played both of them, huh? Gotta keep the spotlight somehow. Something snapped. Katsuki, who hadn't spoken all day, who hadn't looked at anyone, who hadn't shouted, hadn't even cursed, exploded. You don't know anything. So just stop talking before you twist something you'll never understand. The crowd fell silent. Every camera turned. Every phone recorded. Even the rival band member stepped back. Katsuki stepped forward, jaw clenched, eyes burning. We didn't ask for your opinions. So just be quiet. The silence after Katsuki's outburst didn't last long. He turned, shoved past their stunned circle shoulder hard against Todoroki's and marched toward the car. Kaken, wait, Izuku called, voice cracking. But the door slammed. Tires screeched. And just like that, he was gone. Todoroki stepped forward. Calm. Collected. But his voice carried enough weight to silence even the pushiest reporter. Nothing happened between us, he said. We've been friends for years. We went for a walk. That's all. Flashes blinked. Phones recorded. People started whispering again, less angry now, more unsure. Izuku, voice thin, followed up. It's true. I am sorry for the misunderstanding. There was a pause. And slowly, finally, the tension in the crowd started to ease. Some fans lowered their phones. Security stepped in to manage the thinning crowd. Managers exhaled, already rewriting the narrative in their heads. But Izuku's heart hadn't calmed. Not even close. He stood there, barely hearing Jiraiya's sigh of relief, or Kaminari muttering, thank God. Barely noticing Todoroki stepping back, hands in his pockets, gaze soft but distant. Izuku's eyes stayed locked on the road. Where Katsuki had gone. He's not answering. Kirishima lowered his phone, his frown deepening. Voicemail again. Where is he? Zero snapped, pacing. We have to finish rehearsing our set. We go on stage in 2.5 days. Everyone was buzzing in full-blown panic, assistants whispering, managers arguing, stylists hovering with untouched schedules. The entire studio felt like it was about to combust from stress. Can't someone just track his phone or something? Kaminari asked, clearly joking, but no one laughed. Jairu cursed under her breath. This is bad. Sponsors are watching us closely. If Bakugo doesn't show, they'll assume the show's falling apart. Izuku stood to the side, unmoving. His fists clenched. There was a tightness in his chest that hadn't let up since Bakugo had disappeared. The whole day had spiraled, words thrown, tension thick enough to drown in, and now, this ache. This instinct. Something buzzing just beneath his skin. He suddenly turned to Kirishima and Jairu. That old place we used to rehearse. Denotation Heart Studio. The garage space in Mizurufu. He looked between them. Does it still exist? They both blinked. Jairu glanced at Kirishima. Kirishima nodded slowly. Yeah. It's locked up. No power or anything, but, it's still standing. Izuku didn't hesitate. I'll be back. He grabbed his hoodie, slipped on a cap, and rushed out the door. The building was still there. Dusty. Boarded up. Faded graffiti on the side wall. He stood in front of it, heartbeat climbing. For a moment, he thought maybe he was wrong. Then he heard something metallic clanging inside. A muffled curse. He found the side entrance unlocked. And when he stepped in there, he was slouched on the edge of the old couch they used to sit on after midnight rehearsals, legs wide, head down, knuckles bruised. The air smelled like dust, sweat, and frustration. Kaken. Izuku's voice came out sharp, uneven. Bakugo looked up and glared. What are you doing here? You didn't tell anyone where you were going, Izuku said, trying to keep his voice level. People are worried. We have to rehearse. The show's in 2, then without warning, Katsuki shoved past him with his shoulder. Don't act like you care. Izuku stumbled but held his ground. I do care. What's your problem? You are. Katsuki snapped, finally facing him. You've always been. You're being ridiculous. Oh, I'm being ridiculous. Katsuki barked out a laugh that didn't sound amused at all. You're the one who dragged us into this whole mess with that half-and-half guy and your little PR games. Izuku's eyes narrowed. We didn't even do anything wrong. It's not about him. It's about you. And me. And how we're stuck in this fake dating thing, but it's still, he broke off, breathing hard. He felt betrayed, and he couldn't even explain why. They weren't a thing. Never had been. So why did it feel like something had been taken from him? He was sick of pretending, of playing along in this fake relationship that somehow started to feel too real. Sick of the way it pulled at him. Twisted him up. Katsuki turned on him, eyes sharp, blazing. And don't act like this is new. Like you haven't done this before. Like you haven't betrayed me. Izuku's breath caught. What are you talking about? You left, Katsuki growled. You walked away from everything from me back when denotation heart actually meant something. I was 19, Kaken, Izuku said, stepping forward. I didn't know what I was doing. His voice cracked, fury giving way to hurt. And being with you back then, it felt suffocating. You were always loud and angry and right there, and I didn't know how to breathe. Silence filled the space between them. Katsuki blinked like he'd just been hit. Izuku's voice softened, almost a whisper. At that time, I had to leave. The words dropped heavily between them. The band. You think that's what this is about? Katsuki's voice was low now, steady and sharp. It's about the fact that for once, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. And the second it got hard, you bailed. Izuku stared at him, stunned. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Nothing that would have fixed it. Nothing that would have made it right. What could he say to that? That he was scared. That everything between them had always been tangled up in noise and history. That even now standing here, years later, it still scared him. The silence stretched long and thin between them. Kaken, Izuku's voice cracked. I'm sorry. But Katsuki just turned around and walked out. Just footsteps fading like a song cut off mid-chorus. And Izuku was left in the silence, the weight of everything unsaid settling on his chest like dust on old lyrics. Now, they were older. Still pretending. Still breaking in places that never healed. Less than 24 hours after everything shattered between them in that dusty old rehearsal room, they were back under lights. Cameras on. Smiles ready. The manager's voice crackled through the earpiece, last-minute promo. Fan call. Just one. Be sweet. Katsuki didn't reply. Izuku nodded stiffly. The screen lit up with two smiling faces, young, giddy, holding hands. Oh my God, one of them gasped, nearly crying. We can't believe it's really you. Katsuki forced a grin. Izuku tried to sit up straighter. You guys taught us that love can be messy and complicated and still worth it, the fan continued. You showed us it's okay to fight. To forgive. To try again. You gave us hope, the other added. Izuku's throat tightened. Katsuki forced a laugh, a breath too sharp, too strained. They said the right things. Thanked them. Wished them the best. The call ended. And then silence. The set dimmed. Crew moved on. But the two of them sat there, unmoving, side by side on the same couch. No words. Just the heavy, choking quiet. The weight of the lie settled in like smoke between them. Izuku didn't look at him. Katsuki didn't move. The fans believed in them. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. Less than an hour later, they found themselves caught in another obligation. The label described it as a simple PR stroll. Hold hands. Flash a few smiles. Greet a couple of fans. It'll be over fast. It wasn't. A girl, maybe 16, with shining eyes, reached forward with trembling hands. Please take these, she said, her cheeks flushed pink. They're matching bracelets. For couples. My mom makes them for long-lasting love. Katsuki and Izuku accepted them with both hands, bowing slightly and smiling. Next came a hand-folded letter, then a drawing of them under stage lights, and finally, a pressed flower in a tiny glass jar, for a future that never wilts. Katsuki maintained a polite, stiff expression, but Izuku could sense the heat in his silence, the way his fingers twitched every time someone mentioned blessed relationships or true love. They posed, nodded, and thanked the fans for their support. But in the moments between the flashes of lights and the applause, Izuku glanced sideways. Katsuki wasn't smiling. Neither was he. Chapter 13, Still Do. Everyone was buzzing. The event was set for the next day. Ground Zero and Emerald Riot were preparing for their long-awaited back-to-back performances, culminating in a grand duet. Staff ran on caffeine and adrenaline, stylists flitted around with last-minute fittings, and the sound techs rehearsed until midnight. It was electric. Everyone could feel it. Kirishima leaned over and nudged Izuku lightly. You ready for tomorrow, man? Izuku glanced up, his eyes catching Katsuki leaning back against a crate, half listening to someone from PR discuss stage placements. Even from across the room, he looked tense and exhausted. Yeah, Izuku lied. The truth was, he felt like he couldn't breathe. He sat in the corner of the dressing room long after Kirishima left, fingers grazing the edge of the lyric sheet he didn't need. He knew every word, every note. Later, they would stand side by side on stage again, the moment everyone had been waiting for. He shut his eyes, lost in the memory of when they were just 19, sweaty, wild, and fearless, laughing into the mic like they owned the world. The lights had been dimmer, the venue smaller, the crowd tighter. "Don't mess up the bridge," Katsuki had said, eyes gleaming. "I swear to God, Deku, I wrote the bridge, Kaken. Don't worry." Izuku had grinned back, nudging him with the mic. The drums kicked in. Katsuki stepped in without missing a beat, their voices crashing into each other like waves meeting the shore. No plan, no precision, just raw, unfiltered emotion. They didn't even realize they were harmonizing until the crowd erupted. It was messy, loud, and imperfect. But it felt right. The present was sterile by comparison, tighter stage, polished cameras, pre-approved setlists. Tomorrow's show felt more controlled, appealing voices wrapped around a hollow core. Izuku couldn't sleep. It was past 1 a.m., and the hotel room was dark except for the faint blue glow from the balcony door. Their call time was 6 a.m., and he had barely gotten any proper rest all week. He lay in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, hoping exhaustion would win out. It didn't. Now he stood on the balcony, his bare feet cold against the tile, arms braced on the railing, body tense as if relaxing would cause him to fall apart. Behind him, the sliding door creaked open. "Izuku." Jairu's voice was groggy, like she had just woken up. He turned to see her wrapped in a hotel robe, hair messy, eyes squinting in the dark. "You still awake?" she mumbled. He gave her a tired smile. "Couldn't sleep." She stepped outside with him, hugging herself against the early morning chill. "I figured. You've been quieter than usual." Izuku let out a small laugh that didn't sound right. The wind swept past them, soft and cold. "He hurt you, Izuku," Jairu said gently. "But you hurt him too." "I know." His voice barely carried over the breeze as he stared down at the sleeping city, jaw clenched. We were never even real. So why does it feel like I ruined something?" Jairu was quiet for a moment. "Maybe because you didn't ruin something fake. Maybe it was real to both of you even if you didn't admit it." Izuku blinked. "You think it was all pretend," she continued, her tone soft but steady. "But since Detonation Heart, it wasn't." Izuku turned to her slowly, brows furrowed. "I saw it, Izuku. Back when the band first started gaining traction." Jairu leaned on the railing beside him, gaze fixed somewhere far off. "On stage, in the studio, during after-gig dinners, you two weren't just partners in music. You gravitated toward each other like you didn't even notice it was happening." She glanced at him. "The way he looked at you when he thought no one was watching. That wasn't fake. And you looked at him like he was the only thing anchoring you to the world." Izuku swallowed hard. He started, but the words dissolved in his throat. Jairu didn't press. "Look, I know what the label says. What the management arranged. I know this whole fake dating setup was supposed to be temporary, just noise for the cameras," she said, crossing her arms, her eyes narrowing slightly, not unkindly, but sharp in the way only a friend could be. "You two signed up to fake it, yeah. But somewhere along the line, it stopped being about the PR, something real snuck in. And now, you're both miserable because neither of you knows what to do with that." Izuku stayed still, heart pounding in his chest. "You've been trying so hard to pretend it was all just strategy. Just survival," she added gently. "But hearts don't know contracts, Izuku. They don't do business deals. They just feel." Izuku didn't respond right away. His fingers curled tighter on the railing. His throat ached. "I don't even know how to fix it," he whispered. "Well," Jairu nudged him with her elbow. Start by being honest with yourself, at least. Then maybe try him. She turned to go, pausing at the door. You'll never get sleep if you keep lying to your own heart, Izuku. Then she looked back at him. And try to get at least an hour of sleep, yeah. Big day tomorrow. Izuku gave her a faint nod. But when he returned to bed, the city lights still burned behind his eyes. And Katsuki wouldn't leave his mind. D-Day. The venue buzzed with energy amplifiers humming, technicians shouting, and the floor vibrating with the rhythm of boots and nerves. Ground Zero and Emerald Riot were on stage for back-to-back rehearsals, and from a distance, everything seemed perfect. However, a closer look revealed an underlying tension. Izuku attempted to reach out to Katsuki before rehearsal, offering a small "hey," and later asking, "Can we?" But Katsuki brushed past him both times, his jaw clenched and eyes cold, as if they were strangers. Should we be concerned about the duet?" Kaminari whispered to Jairu, glancing between the two. "Very," she replied quietly. This duet was meant to be the emotional highlight of the show, their first since the fallout. It was the moment everyone had anticipated, flooding social media with trending tags and emotional edits. Yet on stage, Katsuki didn't even look at Izuku. His voice was sharp but lacked warmth. Izuku felt like a ghost, searching for a connection that wasn't there. They stood side by side, yet it felt as if they were miles apart. "This isn't going to work," the sound technician groaned. "We're 5 hours from curtain," one of the producers exclaimed, running a hand down their face in frustration. Moments later, the manager burst in, headset buzzing with chaos. "This is the last show. Just keep pretending. After this, you can go back to ignoring each other." Izuku felt the weight of those words. Just keep pretending. He nodded, eyes downcast, while Katsuki remained silent. Backstage was a whirlwind of activity. Stylists flitted around with costume racks, and staff shouted about lighting cues and confetti timing. Everyone was anxiously watching the clock. Naturally, the rest of Emerald Riot and Ground Zero decided to intervene. "We should lock them in a room," Kaminari suggested, his tone serious. "For 5 minutes. Zero raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Is that really the best idea?" Jairu questioned, skeptical. "We're 4 hours to showtime." "They're not talking," Kirishima pointed out, glancing toward the dressing rooms. "And they both look miserable. Do you want that duet to be a disaster?" Todoroki added. "Then it's settled," Tokoyami stated matter-of-factly. A moment of silence followed. "Are we really doing this?" Zero muttered. The plan was absurd, immature, and potentially career-ending. But it worked. Zero tricked Katsuki into stepping into a spare dressing room under the pretense of a last-minute mic test, while Jairu told Izuku he needed help checking harmonies real quick. As soon as they were inside, the door clicked shut. "What the heck?" Katsuki spun around. "You've got 5 minutes." Kirishima's voice called from the other side of the door. "We'll unlock it after that, or when you stop being stubborn." "Whichever comes first," Jairu added. "Are you serious?" Izuku rushed to the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Kaminari yelled from outside, "Don't worry. There's water and no sharp objects. You think this is funny?" Katsuki banged on the door. Izuku let out a shaky breath. "This is insane." Silence enveloped them, heavy and palpable. Neither of them looked at the other. The room felt too small, the air thick with unspoken words. Izuku exhaled, determined to break the silence. "Kaken, what?" Katsuki replied, still avoiding eye contact. "Tell me if you don't want to do this." Katsuki turned away, his jaw clenched as if he was holding back everything he wanted to say. "It didn't used to be this hard," Izuku murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't just referring to the duet. "Back in college, when we were still in the same band. When we knew how to work together. Katsuki remained silent, but Izuku noticed his posture tense. It should have felt the same, Izuku continued. Getting on stage with you. Making music like we used to. But it didn't feel the same. It was no longer just about the stage lights and melodies, it was about the silence filled with unspoken truths. Everything had changed, the distance Katsuki kept and the way Izuku filled the silence with anything but honesty. I don't hate being on stage with you, Katsuki finally said, still not meeting his gaze. I just hate how it feels afterward. Izuku blinked. Why? Because it doesn't go away, Katsuki replied, his voice rough, as if it cost him to admit it. Izuku's heart raced. I still do. The words echoed in his mind before he realized they had come from him. That explained everything, the suffocating feeling and why their unresolved tension lingered. Bakugo Katsuki didn't know how to handle feelings, and Izuku had spent years pretending he didn't have any left. He took a small step toward Katsuki. Then maybe we stop pretending we're fine afterward. Katsuki finally looked at him, his eyes unreadable, but he didn't pull away. Just then, Jiraiya knocked on the door. Okay, we're unlocking now unless you need more time. Neither of them moved. Chapter 14, Screw the Act. The door clicked open. Katsuki stormed out first, his shoulders tense but not in anger, more flustered than furious. Izuku followed a moment later, his head down, trying not to show how relieved he felt. The others waited in the hallway, eager and curious. Kaminari leaned forward dramatically. Well. Katsuki shot them a glare. I'll deal with you all after this. His ears betrayed him, turning a shade of pink. Zero chuckled. Aha. Violent threats and blushing. That's progress. Izuku attempted to sound casual, though his voice was a bit too high. We're good for rehearsal. Yeah, I bet it is, Jiraiya smirked, exchanging a knowing glance with Zero. Todoroki, deadpan, tilted his head. Your emotional tension has decreased by approximately 14%. That's promising. Katsuki glared at him. What does that even mean? Tokoyami nodded thoughtfully. The shadows have grown lighter around you both. The void approves. Thanks. Izuku blinked in confusion. Kirishima clapped his hands together, cheerful. All right. Team morale is back up. Let's get ready, everyone. Katsuki muttered something under his breath as he headed toward the dressing rooms. Izuku lingered for a moment, watching Katsuki's retreating figure. The tension hadn't vanished, but something felt different now, lighter. Todoroki observed Izuku silently before stating, locking them in a room was the right move. You didn't even vote, Kaminari pointed out. Didn't need to, Todoroki replied. This was inevitable. Backstage was filled with excitement and energy. Nervous technicians hurried about, light panels flickered, and the crowd's anticipation built like thunder behind the curtains. Okay, Kaminari announced, arms wide, his eyes shining with emotion and perhaps a bit too much energy drink. I know we started off as band rivals, but guys, wow, I love all of you. Kirishima immediately dove in for a hug. Group hug. No take-backs. Zero squawked as he got pulled in. Bro, I have a mic pack on. Jiraiya rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling as she joined the group. This is so lame, she muttered, her voice cracking slightly. Todoroki blinked at the scene. Is this part of the pre-show ritual? Yes, Kirishima, Zero, and Kaminari replied in unison, already dragging him into the embrace. Tokoyami raised his arms dramatically. Let our final harmony be a requiem of fire and fate. You dramatic goth pigeon, Kaminari chuckled. Get over here. Katsuki stood at the edge of the chaos, arms crossed, one brow twitching. You're all a bunch of saps. Ah, is Kaken getting misty-eyed? Zero teased. I'll light you on fire, idiot. But Katsuki didn't walk away. Izuku stood just outside the tangle, laughing quietly to himself. He stepped into the circle as well. Gyru pulled away, adjusting her in-ear. "Alright. Let's go, people." Curtain rises in 60. Everyone broke formation, scrambling to their positions. The stage manager's voice echoed, "Places, everyone." Katsuki leaned in so only Izuku could hear, not looking at him but staring ahead at the bright stage lights. "Try not to trip over your own feet, nerd." Izuku blinked in surprise, a small, stunned laugh escaping him. He didn't respond, just nudged Katsuki's arm gently. For a brief moment, Katsuki's lip twitched, not quite a smile, but almost. Back-to-back sets. One final show. Then the duet. Emerald Riot stepped into the blue shadows of the right wing. Izuku's hand hovered by his mic, his heart racing against his ribs. Ground Zero took their place across from them. Katsuki cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, and didn't look over. The lights dimmed further. The crowd screamed louder. The lights surged. The music hit. The show began. The stage erupted as Ground Zero took the spotlight. Katsuki stormed onto the platform, his energy igniting the crowd as the first guitar riff blasted through the stadium. Zero's bass shook the ground, Kirishima's drums pulsed like a heartbeat, and Kaminari's synths electrified the atmosphere. The audience went wild, hands in the air, voices singing along, a mix of laughter and tears alive. Katsuki's voice pierced through the mic, commanding attention with his sharp gaze and magnetic presence. Midway through their second song, a fire cannon shot off behind them, perfectly timed with the bass drop, sending the crowd into a frenzy. As the set concluded with a thunderous roar of drums and feedback, Katsuki ripped out his earpiece, panting, his eyes darting toward the wings. Izuku, known as Emerald Riot, was ready to take the stage. He bounced on the ball of his feet, mic in hand, exuding an energy that promised an unforgettable performance. As Ground Zero exited, Izuku sprinted on, Gyru's bass steady, Todoroki's guitar sharp, and Tokoyami driving the beat HRD on drums. Izuku took center stage, arms outstretched, eyes bright and wild. Every word he sang felt like it was the last chance to express himself, and every movement was charged with emotion. When he turned to face the crowd, the spotlights flashed, and Todoroki hit the bridge with intensity, prompting the fans to scream their names. Then, Ground Zero was back. Katsuki stormed the stage, guitar slung low, his expression fierce. Zero's bass rolled like thunder, Kirishima's drums quickened, and Kaminari triggered a pyrotechnic burst that lit up the sky. The crowd erupted, their screams shaking the speakers. Katsuki's voice rose above it all, fierce and commanding. Izuku dashed in, sweat glistening, a grin breaking through as he launched into the chorus, his voice unwavering. The energy surged back and forth, with no breaks, no mercy, the crowd fully immersed in the moment. Then, the lights cut, and everything froze for the moment they had all been waiting for, the duet. The stage dimmed, two mics stood in the center, and a single spotlight illuminated the space. Izuku's heart raced as the lights shifted, and he found Katsuki beside him, closer than he had been in days. Katsuki looked flushed from the performance, his hair damp and wild. He exuded a raw energy that felt almost untouchable. But now, he was right there, real and breathing. Izuku felt a rush of emotions crashing over him. This wasn't just a performance, it was real. He barely noticed Katsuki stepping closer until he spoke, his voice low and rough. "You still do that thing? With your mic?" Izuku blinked, surprised. What thing?" Katsuki's gaze remained fixed ahead. "That bounce. Like you're holding your breath before the chorus. You're nervous. You remember that? Do you think I forgot?" Izuku's heart raced, and he felt a surge of courage. He loved Katsuki fiercely, with every raw nerve ignited inside him. He didn't know when it had started, but it didn't matter. Standing side by side, heart pounding, he realized he wasn't going to run from it anymore. The manager held up 3 fingers. "It's showtime," someone shouted from the back. But Izuku's voice broke through the tension. "W8." Everyone froze. Ground Zero, Emerald Riot, even the tech crew paused. Katsuki turned sharply, his expression tense. "What?" Izuku's heart raced as he gripped the mic tightly. "Let's play it slow. Slow the tempo." Silence followed. "You serious?" Kaminari asked, surprised. "We didn't rehearse it that way," Tokoyami added, steady in his tone. "It's risky," Shiro muttered. "But maybe that's the point," Todoroki said calmly, stepping beside Izuku. "We've always done it their way." Jiraiya looked back at Izuku, a half-smile on her lips. "Izuku. You really want this?" Izuku's gaze swept across the stage, landing on Katsuki. He swallowed hard, his voice steady. "I want it." A moment passed, and Jiraiya smirked, adjusting her earpiece. "All right then." Kirishima gave a thumbs up, and Tokoyami nodded in agreement. Shiro exhaled, accepting the challenge. Katsuki looked at Izuku, and in that moment, everything else faded away. "Let's do it," he said, and the lights blacked out. The crowd erupted, a tidal wave of cheers crashing against the stage as fog and strobe lights pulsed in sync. Izuku stepped into the energy, heart racing, with Katsuki by his side. The roar of the crowd faded into the background, all that mattered was their connection. "Kaken," Izuku said, barely audible. Katsuki turned to him, eyes blazing even in the dark. Izuku hesitated, voice trembling. "It's not fake anymore." Katsuki's response was low and gritted, as if it had been waiting to be said. "It never was." The last wall between them shattered. Despite everything the years apart, the quiet ache of distance, the spotlight, the staged romance, the headlines that never got it right, they still found their way back. Crawling, crashing, and clinging, like gravity in their bones, like instinct in their blood. Then the first slow note rang out. Strpped, vulnerable, real. Izuku drew in a breath and met Katsuki's eyes. This time, he would sing not for the lights, not for the crowd, but for him. The crowd blurred into background noise, just static against the pounding in Izuku's chest. The lights faded to near darkness, leaving just the two of them standing side by side in the spotlight. A slow, pulsing instrumental played behind them, familiar but softer, strppd down, like a heartbeat in quiet panic. Katsuki didn't look at him fully, just tilted his head slightly toward Izuku, close enough to feel the tremble in the air between them. And then he sang, low and bare, every word like a secret peeled off his chest. "Have you got color in your cheeks?" Izuku froze. They had rehearsed this song countless times, but it felt different this time. The slow tempo, the way Katsuki sang it, like he asked it, like he knew the answer, like he remembered every flush in Izuku's face from all the years he pretended it meant nothing. "Do you ever get that fear that you can't shift?" A pause. Katsuki's voice dipped, daring himself to say it. "The type that sticks around like something in your teeth." It was a fear that lingered, quiet, constant, and impossible to shake. It clung to him like feelings do when you try to bury them too deep. This was Katsuki, finally letting the truth bleed through the cracks. "Are there some aces up your sleeve?" It was a challenge, half-spoken fear, half-daring hope. Like he was asking if there was something Izuku wasn't telling him, something still held back. Because if Izuku had something hidden, then so did he. Maybe that meant this wasn't one-sided after all. Izuku swallowed hard, unable to look away. "Have you no idea that you're in deep? I dreamt about you nearly every night this week." There it was, finally spoken, like they were both admitting the lyrics they wrote were never fiction. It had always been true. Izuku stepped closer to the mic, breath hitching as the chords lingered behind him, low, slow, steady. His hand trembled around the mic stand, but his voice held. "How many secrets can you keep? He didn't look at the crowd, his eyes were on Katsuki. Every word had been sitting on his chest for years, and tonight, he was finally letting them go. "'Cause there's this tune I found that makes me think of you somehow. And I play it on repeat." He offered the faintest smile, gentle, tinged with sorrow, a quiet way of saying he had never left Izuku's mind, even when it hurt. Katsuki's lips parted. "Until I fall asleep." Spilling drinks on my settee. He was staring at Katsuki, and Katsuki was staring right back. This wasn't fake, it never had been. The light stayed low, just a soft amber haze around them. Izuku's fingers tightened on the mic. Katsuki stood just a breath away, head bowed, jaw tense, bracing himself for the weight of it. "Do I wanna know?" Katsuki's voice, rough and low, opened the line, dragging every syllable like it hurt to say it. "If this feeling flows both ways." Izuku answered, clearer, softer, but no less aching. "Sad to see you go. Was sort of hoping that you'd stay." Katsuki looked at him, really looked. Eyes sharp but burning. Izuku didn't blink. He held Katsuki's gaze and sang like his chest would break. "Baby, we both know, together now, perfect, tense, like two halves of the same storm finally colliding. That the nights were mainly made for saying things that you can't say tomorrow." The last line hung in the air like a held breath. The crowd was silent, no screaming, just stillness. It was as if everyone knew they were witnessing something more than music. This wasn't just a duet, it was a confession, a surrender, a beginning. "Crawling back to you," Katsuki sang it low, like a truth pulled straight from his ribs. His voice cracked just barely, but it was enough. It was real. "Ever thought of calling when you've had a few?" Izuku's voice trembled, not weakness, just honesty. "'Cause I always do." That line wasn't for the crowd, it was for him. It had always been about Katsuki. "Maybe I'm too." Katsuki stepped in, his voice rising just a notch. "Busy being yours to fall for somebody new." Then they both took the last line together. "Now I've thought it through, crawling back to you." The harmony was perfect, but the truth underneath it was messy, raw, undeniable. Even as the second verse began, no one cheered. The audience stayed frozen, like the entire room was holding its breath. The rest of Emerald Riot and Ground Zero were all grinning, knowing exactly what this was. They had seen the rehearsals, heard this song 100 times, but never like this. Tonight, finally, Izuku and Katsuki weren't just singing, they were admitting it. They had written this song as a maybe, a what if, a memory of something unsaid. But this time, it wasn't pretend anymore. Katsuki's brows twitched, his throat bobbing with a swallow he didn't hide. "I don't know if you feel the same as I do." His voice dropped to a near whisper, eyes burning, not with fury, but with something far more terrifying, hope. "But we could be together if you wanted to." He meant every word. They sang the chorus again, slower, fuller, like a confession. Izuku's voice came first, trembling but open, like his whole heart was strung between every note. Katsuki followed, voice gritty with everything he never said out loud, everything he couldn't. They didn't look at the crowd, didn't play to the lights, they only looked at each other. As the chorus crested, there was no mistaking it anymore. This was them, finally, no masks. Their voices met in that last verse, soft, slow, raw. "Do I wanna know?" Izuku's voice wavered with emotion. "Too busy being yours to fall," Katsuki sang, gaze fixed on him, like it had always been meant for no one else. "Sad to see you go, ever thought of calling, darling?" Katsuki didn't flinch. "Do I wanna know?" Both of them now, eyes locked, hearts loud. "Do you want me crawling back to you?" And it was like time stopped. The stage fell away. The noise dimmed. The crowd became a distant hum, overshadowed by something deep and true. The rest of the band smiled, knowing this moment was inevitable. The answer was evident in every glance, every note, every breath shared between them. As the last note faded, silence enveloped the space for a moment before the crowd erupted into cheers, screams, and applause, as if a dam had broken. Yet, Izuku and Katsuki remained still, their eyes locked, the world around them fading away. From behind, Kaminari whistled low, commenting on the undeniable connection. Jiraiya smirked, agreeing with him. Shiro nudged Kaminari, joking about their own turn in the spotlight. The rest of the band chuckled softly, respecting the magic unfolding on stage. Izuku and Katsuki stood bathed in amber light, hearts racing louder than the crowd. The moment lingered, filled with tension and emotion. The audience was wild, calling out both their names, some in tears, others in disbelief. The air buzzed with excitement. Katsuki's earlier words echoed in Izuku's mind. Leaning into his mic, Katsuki spoke again, his voice low and sincere. "I meant every word." The crowd roared, but Izuku barely registered it, his heart pounding. "I can't keep pretending this is just music," Katsuki continued, his voice softer. "It's you. It's always been you." Izuku tightened his grip on the mic, allowing the weight of those words to wash over him. He stepped forward, eyes intense, and replied, "I know. I think. I always knew." He exhaled, almost laughing, his voice wavering. The crowd fell silent, as if witnessing something monumental. "I just didn't think you'd ever say it first." Katsuki blinked in surprise. Izuku, blushing but resolute, added, "It's always been you too." The silence shattered as the crowd erupted once more, their excitement palpable. People screamed in joy, some throwing items into the air, while others expressed their disbelief. Backstage, the crew was in shock, and the band was overwhelmed by the reaction. Kaminari shouted in excitement, realizing the mic was still on. Shiro needed a moment to catch his breath, while Jiraiya was animatedly reacting to the confession. Kirishima was in tears of joy, proclaiming his belief in their bond. Tokoyami calmly observed, noting the emotional intensity of the moment. Meanwhile, Izuku and Katsuki remained focused on each other, the world around them fading. Katsuki, flustered, grumbled about confessing in front of everyone. Izuku smiled, teasing him about the situation. "You didn't not mean it either," he replied playfully. Katsuki grunted in response, trying to maintain his composure. "I literally love you," Izuku declared, prompting a flustered reaction from Katsuki. Kaminari, ever the instigator, encouraged the crowd to cheer for a kiss. The stadium erupted again, with fans expressing their excitement in various ways. Kirishima laughed, and Jiraiya lamented about not charging more for the show. Todoroki calmly remarked on the emotional intensity of the moment, while Izuku tried to suppress his laughter, clearly in love. Katsuki looked like he wanted to disappear, overwhelmed by the attention. "Come on, Kaken, let's do it for the fans," Izuku suggested with a teasing grin. Katsuki's face turned an even deeper shade of red, and he protested, confused by the suggestion. Izuku shrugged, enjoying the playful banter. "For the documentaries," he added, trying to keep it light. Katsuki was caught off guard, struggling to respond. Izuku leaned in closer, teasing him further. "I think your heart's been on since middle school, actually." Katsuki's expression flickered between frustration and disbelief. As the crowd continued to cheer, Katsuki exploded in mock anger, threatening to leave if the comments didn't stop. The audience, however, was relentless, chanting for more. Izuku leaned in, whispering, "Too late to back out now, Kaken." The rest of the band was already preparing for the next song, caught up in the excitement. Kaminari was full of energy, Jiraiya was tuning her guitar, and Todoroki was readying himself at the keyboard. Shiro was spinning his drumsticks, and Kirishima was practically vibrating with excitement. The atmosphere was electric, and the stage was set for an unforgettable performance. The darkness seemed to embrace them as Jiraiya called out with enthusiasm, ready to deliver an unforgettable performance. Kaminari, filled with excitement, announced his intention to share the entire confession on the GZ's official account. Katsuki, determined and focused, gripped the microphone tightly, his other hand still holding onto Izuku's. From the wings, a crew member shouted for one more song, and the lights dimmed, signaling the start of their final performance. It was an encore for them, a moment to shine together.